Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Let's Talk Fantasy Football. I'm your host tonight. My name is Nick Walsh, and if you're a new Let's Talk Fantasy Football listener, like a new to 2018 Let's Talk Fantasy Football listener, this is a new voice coming at you. But if you're not, if you're a longtime fan, then you know him. You hopefully love him. You've probably been wondering whether we kicked him out, whether he died in a tragic fishing accident, or what the situation exactly may be. But I can assure you, he is alive. He is well. And he is here making his 2018 debut with me tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Matt Rogers. Rogers, what's up, dude?
What's up, Walsh? Thank you for a great introduction. For those of you that have never heard me before, if you are a new listener, the only thing I can really tell you is that I'm a bitch. My opinions are super, super great, but I don't put them into practice. So listen to me, but don't bank on having much success with it, I guess. And if you're a long-time listener, I can hear your groans all the way from Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah, that is true. Rogers has some of the most intelligent fantasy football opinions of like anyone that I've ever met in my entire life. And for some reason, in some leagues it translates, and then in the big league that we're in, it's just never really translated into actual success. But in some other leagues that we've been in, Rogers is a multi-time champion. As I said, some of the best opinions and some of the smartest thinking, some of the smartest like step-to-step sort of conclusions of anyone that we talk to. So hopefully it'll be better than.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm thinking this is like a prank, and that Shrek's gonna pop out on the other side of this Google Hangout and be like, "Just kidding, you're fired, bitch."
I can assure you it is not. And for those of you who listen to Vinny and Don's recap podcast, I can assure you that we're a hell of a lot better than those two morons.
That's bad.
No, I'm kidding. They did a great job on that recap podcast, and I greatly enjoyed it listening to it today. That being said, Rogers, before we get too far, want to let everyone know that we are here courtesy of Auction Draft. So while the NFL season may have officially kicked off, your hopes of drafting a fantasy football team for 2018 isn't gone, because with Auction Draft, you can draft your team at any time, have a 5-week season with your friends. That way, when you pay way too much for Bell, hoping he shows up, you get another shot to get it right in 5 weeks. So you can sign up now by going to letstalkfantasyfootball.com/auction draft. Use that promo code LTFF. You'll save 50% off your league. I'm sure that ad read hit home with you as someone who is just losing their shit over Bell not being in camp right now or with the Steelers right now.
Oh, yeah. And we'll get into that a little bit later with how people should handle that. But I am definitely not feeling good at all. And it happened in the league where I talk the most shit and have the most success. So I'm sweating.
Yeah, not spectacular, but what can you do? We'll figure it all out eventually, I suppose. So, guys, we are here to talk week 2 games. We're going to get through 7 of them in this first podcast. And then there will be another podcast coming out, most likely a day from when this one landed on your phone, with the other 8 games. So if you missed the recap last night, at the end of it, Vinny and Don previewed Baltimore at Cincinnati. That is the Thursday night game this week. They previewed that because we weren't sure exactly when we were going to get to this. Turns out we got to it on Wednesday, so everything worked out just fine. But since it's already done, we're going to move past that. Let's go Bengals in that one for Vinny's sake. And we're going to get right into the Sunday games with Indianapolis at Washington. Now, Rogers, this is a 5.5 point line in favor of Washington, and the over-under here is 45.5. So we're looking at a pretty sizable Washington, I guess, favorite here. Let's start on the Indianapolis side of the ball, though, as the visiting team. Andrew Luck was better than I expected week 1. What do you expect out of him and the Indianapolis offense week 2 against Washington?
Well, I agree that Luck looked a lot better than I thought he would. I drafted him in a couple leagues. There was a lot of like those tier quarterbacks from like 8 to 14 that kind of all had some mediocre showings, looking at like Stafford and Garoppolo, Patrick Mahomes being like the outlier. So I think if you had the balls enough to like draft Andrew Luck and start him last week, I say you just ride it out this week too. I see no reason to be discouraged by what happened. It wasn't an incredibly like sexy game, but I definitely have faith with him at Washington, even though they're the favorite. Even if they get behind a little bit, Andrew Luck will start slinging, man.
Yeah, and that's really what happened this past week, where he threw the ball 53 times. In that way, I think his production isn't necessarily sustainable, but I'm right there with you, where I think he's probably a fine start this week. He's not the worst. He's not the best. Do you have an opinion on his running backs, Jordan Wilkins and Nyheim Hines? And I guess Marlon Mack may or may not be back at this point, but Wilkins and Hines are splitting snaps, and it's pretty gross. Do you have any recommendations regarding either of them?
Yeah, I mean, one last thing I'll say on Luck is something that may concern me a little bit would be I could see the time of possession really favoring the Redskins in this game. Alex Smith has always kind of been that way, and even if they get up with that running game they got going now with AP, which we'll talk about in a second, I could see that kind of being a hindrance to Luck, like you said, sustaining that like 50 throws a game, though we've seen that a lot from the Colts. But to your point on the running backs, I still like both of these guys as a stash. I actually like Wilkins more than Mack as a stash and Hines. I definitely don't want to roll them out this week, but I still think bottom of the bench, they're worthy of a roster spot unless like you got a lot of guys you really like and need on your bench and got to go get one of these big waiver wire pickups. I don't think they should be finding your lineup, but I'm still kind of intrigued by Wilkins. He looked okay, and it just seems like that they might have a little bit of confidence in him going forward.
Yeah, 14 carries, 3 targets for Wilkins, which was, it's really not that bad when you look at the running backs around the league in terms of usage. Nyheim Hines ended up with 9 targets this past week, didn't do much at all in the running game, and also really didn't do much with his targets. Let's talk about Luck's pass catchers. Obviously, T.Y. Hilton's the guy here. Now, theoretically, he has a bit of a tough matchup this week against Josh Norman, but the Colts are good enough at moving him around the formation, and he saw 21% of the targets for the team during week 1. I'm back on T.Y. Hilton this week. I think he'll do just fine.
Yeah, I agree. And you're always hoping for that big play anyway, which Josh Norman, as good as he is, can still be susceptible to. So, if you drafted T.Y. Hilton, this should not be a matchup that scares you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other 2 guys we should talk about here are probably Jack Doyle and Ryan Grant. Each of them saw about 20% of the targets. Doyle is really lining up, particularly this year, where Andrew Luck isn't throwing the ball downfield as much as he has in the past, likely due to that arm strength issue, and perhaps the coaching change as well. But Jack Doyle seems like a guy who you can count on for somewhere between 6 and 12 targets week to week going forward. And I think he's a startable tight end almost the rest of the year at this point. I know that's a little difficult to say after week 1, but love Doyle even in this matchup. Ryan Grant also saw a lot of targets, but they weren't really valuable targets. He really didn't he caught 8 balls, but I think for 70 something yards. So yeah, not too crazy about that.
Yeah, Doyle's always been kind of more of a PPR guy as far as his value because his target share is going to be there. And as far as Ryan Grant, we've kind of seen in this offense that the third option or the second wide receiver is always going to be the third option behind that tight end. So, if you want to do a speculative waiver ad, fine, but I just can't see a situation going forward unless there's other injuries on the receiving core, including the tight ends, that you're really going to ever feel comfortable putting Ryan Grant in your tight end. Like think old school Dante Moncrief. When did you really feel great about that unless you absolutely had to? So especially, and back to Doyle, with a lot of the tight end injuries going around, I wouldn't be surprised if he still finishes as a top 5 PPR tight end this year. So be happy if you have him going forward, I think.
Yeah, that's a great point with some of those tight end injuries. And to your point about Moncrief, the only reason we would ever want to play Moncrief was because he was a red zone weapon. And Andrew Luck liked him in the red zone. He would catch touchdowns. Ryan Grant isn't that same red zone weapon. So it's just more of an argument towards him. Yeah, maybe putting up, 9 PPR points a game, but who really cares at that point? That's not what you're looking for in terms of the upside of a wide receiver. Particularly.
Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say it's not even the bye weeks yet. So
Right, exactly. What I was going to add there is that if you pick up Ryan Grant this week, I have a feeling you'll probably be dropping him in week 4 for the next sexy fantasy guy.
Absolutely.
Waiver guy.
Absolutely correct. The next sexy fantasy guy. That's
next sexy fantasy, yeah.
That's interesting wording, and we'll see what happens with sexy fantasy guys. Anyway, let's move to the Washington side of the ball. where it feels almost like a start everyone game to me. But talk to me about Alex Smith and his, we talked about how he had a pretty nice week 1. What do you think about week 2 against this porous Colts defense?
Yeah, like I said before, I think that the Redskins could, kind of get up in this game a little bit early and sort of just manage the clock a lot. So I see a lot of running in the future. I think Alex Smith will have like a high floor, low ceiling type game. I can't really see him putting up like 30 points necessarily, but I'd be shocked if he put up like less than 17, if that makes sense. So I think he's a really safe play. There's a lot of other quarterbacks with a lot more upside, I think. But if you have Alex Smith on your roster, or you got someone, if you're really like panicking on Stafford or something, I totally think that this is a game where he'll have a pretty decent showing.
Yeah, Alex Smith is what he is, and the Colts defense is bad. I'm right there with you. In terms of his pass catchers, excuse me, it's interesting. Chris Thompson this past week had 7 targets. Paul Richardson had 6. Jordan Reed had 5 and got in the end zone. Crowder got 4. Doxson got 3. So they really spread the ball around. Crowder was my favorite in terms of these guys going into the year. But is there really a guy to look at here as someone you could rely on in the pass game?
I kind of think not. And I'm kind of a little bit off Crowder, at least this week. I still like him for a season-long value. But sort of to your point that you just said, I think spreading the ball around is going to be something that continues. And, when Paul Richardson is getting more targets than Jamison Crowder, that's a little bit concerning. And I do think Alex Smith will have a good and efficient game and that there will be passes to go around. And, someone will probably get a touchdown. But I just don't know who it is. And of those pass catchers, Jordan Reed is the one that is the safest to me.
Very much agreed. I think Reed's easily the safest, and we know they like him in the red zone. In terms of the wide receivers, I have no idea, and I don't think the pass volume is going to be there this week for us to really discern who could have a big game or if someone could have a big game. The only pass catcher I like outside of Reed is Chris Thompson. We saw this past week it lined up as an Adrian Peterson game. Peterson got the ball, I believe, 24 times on the ground and then added 2 more catches. So it was very much an Adrian Peterson game, and Thompson still had a great game for you if you played him. Me, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but I think this is one of those offenses where Thompson you can start week to week, and Peterson you're going to have to look for the right game script. But even in the correct Peterson game script, I think you can still start Thompson, if that makes sense.
I agree with that. And PPR formats aside, so I'm going to pitch a question at you on that point, Walsh. What do you think, if everybody stays healthy all 16 games, the over-under is on games that Chris Thompson leads the Redskins in targets? Would you put it at like 9.5, 10.5?
I'd probably put it at like 7 or 8, but I don't think it's outlandish to say he leads the Redskins in targets double-digit games. Like we know, and if looking through box scores week 1, there's a change in the NFL going on because there are a lot of running backs who led their teams in targets this week. It's not just like the pass catchers like Chris Thompson, like we'll talk about them throughout this, but like Melvin Gordon, Christian McCaffrey, these guys, they're all leading their teams in targets. Like Chris Thompson can be on the field for 40% of snaps and still lead this team in targets, particularly with how much Alex Smith spreads the ball around. So yeah, it's he is an extremely safe play from what it seems like.
Yeah, definitely. Alex Smith targeting a running back a lot is the least surprising thing ever.
Very, very true. And then we touched on Adrian Peterson, but let's just hammer it home here. Great matchup for him. He's not a guy I think you'll be able to play every week. This is a week you should absolutely play him.
Absolutely. I second that.
All right, cool. Let's pick this game. Who you got?
All right, I will go with Washington and the over.
Okay, I'm going to do Washington. I like Washington in the over. I think you're right. It's cool. One of those where I think Washington can get up there and then Indy will have to pass it and all that good stuff. Let's move on to Carolina at Atlanta. Atlanta's a 5-point favorite here. The over-under is 44, which I think before this past week, that's a lower over-under than I would have expected. After the performances that both teams gave this past week, I think it kind of makes sense, but not as much scoring in this one, or predicted scoring, as you maybe would have thought a couple weeks ago. Let's start with Carolina. What do you think about Cam? Not didn't do much in the past game, but he was able to rush pretty well against the Cowboys. Do you think he's a viable start this week?
I do think he's a pretty good start this week. I don't think that you can count on the rushing to be the floor as much, to support that floor as much. But again, I just think you have to count him as a top 10 play. We saw the Falcons defense it was sloppy last week. It was decent, but I don't know. I think Cam can definitely pass through this defense and put on a pretty good showing. To your point, it's not going to be one of those awesome NFC South shootouts that we've got in the past, and specifically last week with the Saints and the Bucks. Those are always the best NFC South shootouts. But I think Cam is like a top 5 play this week, honestly, even with Olsen out, who we'll talk about in a second. But I like Cam a lot. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, you mentioned the rushing, how you didn't think it was maybe going to carry him as much. He had 13 rushes for 58 yards and a touchdown this past week. I think in general, the Panthers' stats from week 1 are a little bit misleading because they are against the team that sucks the pace out of everything in the Cowboys. The Cowboys want to play as slow as possible, and other teams are sort of sucked into that. Atlanta doesn't want to do that, and also Atlanta lost 2 defensive starters in week 1. So I'm pretty in on Cam. I think he'll have a great week. And I think his sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I didn't. I wasn't saying anything. I thought you were breaking up. All I was going to say real quick, I'll just add is that even with Greg Olsen the one thing that is concerning with Greg Olsen is the depth of pass catchers that they have. I don't think is really that great. But like you said, with the rushing threat and now McCaffrey being one of the leading receivers on that team, actually, I still think Cam sustains a nice game here.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And let's talk about those pass targets because you're right. Greg Olsen is out. Ian Thomas, he's a rookie. He's likely to be the guy who's replacing him, but I don't really know. I don't really know if Ian Thomas is the guy to go after here. I think the 2 guys to start on the Carolina offense here are Christian McCaffrey, who, as we mentioned before, led the team in targets. He had 36% of Cam's targets last week rather. Atlanta's also been very vulnerable to pass catching running backs in the past, which, he's the best of that. And then with Olsen out, you would think Devin Funches will garner a larger target share. And he's a guy that I'm pretty comfortable starting, even though he had an underwhelming week 1. What do you think about those 2?
I'm definitely down with Funches, and I agree for that point. To your point with Ian Thomas, I also agree that, even though like we've seen in the past when Olsen's gotten hurt that Ed Dickson was a viable option, but I think Cam fell to the tight end or would fall back to the tight end a little bit more for their veteran aspect of it than like being a tight end thrower for the most part. So I don't really think that that'll translate like you said. I really like Funches and his vertical threat this week. I think it'll open a lot for Christian McCaffrey in the backfield. That's why I kind of think they'll still be able to spread the field pretty well. I think you see Funches run a little more deep routes and have a little more of a deeper average depth of target sort of situation going on. So I think at least volume will be there for Funches, and that's enough to play him for me.
Okay, fair enough. Let's talk about the Atlanta side of the ball. Matt Ryan looked real bad week 1. Are you trying to start him against Carolina?
No, dude, I'm not trying to own him. That was rough. It really was. I did not like how Matt Ryan looked at all. I'm not really going to get into the numbers or anything on that. I just remember being like pretty drunk and watching and just yelling about how bad Matt Ryan looked.
Yeah, he looked awful. It looked like he was floating passes. We'll see what he can do this week, but I see no reason to start him. And you probably didn't invest enough draft capital in him that like he's like a guy you need to start. Like absolutely. So look to other places there. Look to like Alex Smith or something. And then in terms of his pass catchers, the only one who really did anything was Julio in week 1. Do you think there's anyone you want to play besides Julio here?
There's definitely nobody that I want to play in the receiving game, but I really would like to, like if you drafted guys like Calvin Ridley or even Mohamed Sanu, who I don't think is like a great own, I say hold on to them still if you can, because like Julio is not going to get 19 targets a game as good as he is. That they got to start to spread the ball around a little bit more. So I think if you were like really high up on Calvin Ridley and his potential and see him not even bringing a catch last week, like hold out on that a little bit and let this offense develop a little bit more because, again, it's only week 1 and people start panicking. And if you drafted a rookie sleeper, sit on that. Definitely don't plug him in your lineup, but stay true to your team for a little bit.
Yeah, that's fair. I am of the opinion that Calvin Ridley shouldn't have been drafted in the first place, but if you did draft him, you might as well hold on to him at this point and see what happens.
Yeah. That's totally fair too. That's totally fair too. I just say ride the train you bought the ticket for. Bro.
Yeah, that's fair. Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman. Freeman did not practice today, I don't believe. So that's a bit worrisome if you're a Freeman owner. I think either one of these guys is a flex play at best if they both go. But if Freeman doesn't go, then I think Coleman becomes viable. What do you think about that?
I agree with that. They're both flex plays, and like you said, I mean, this team knows that Tevin Coleman could be a starting running back in this league. They've shown in the past that when Freeman's been banged up, that they're fine with running with Coleman and preserving Freeman's health. It's a two-headed monster back there for sure. So I actually like Coleman a little bit more this week just for the goal line potential. I think with Freeman banged up, that Tevin Coleman will be getting a little bit more of the goal line work or the red zone work at the very least, because that's a little more contact involved there, and he's proven he can do it before. So Coleman, I actually give a little bit of an edge to for Freeman, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you on that. I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't really have anything else on this game, so unless you do, who are you taking here?
Now, this game, I will take Carolina and the under.
I'm gonna sound like I'm agreeing with you on everything.
Let's go first next time then.
All right, cool. I'll go first next time. Yeah, I like Carolina in the under here. All right, let's move on to Minnesota at Green Bay. This game is a pick'em. The over/under is 46. So Green Bay at home, I think is the reason for that pick'em. Otherwise, I would think Minnesota would be at least like a 3 or 4 point favorite here. Let's start on the Minnesota side of the ball, though. Kirk looked great week 1. Are you starting him against Green Bay week 2?
Yeah, definitely. I think Kirk looks good in this offense, and he's definitely going to be a top 10 quarterback if healthy this year.
Yeah. That touchdown to Diggs where he just like hit him in stride on the left sideline there, just literally put it right over the cornerback's shoulder, like into his hands. I watched that and was just like, man, that was sexy. And like, if that's what's going to happen here this year, then the Vikings are going to be really fucking good.
Yeah.
It's we'll see how it goes, but they looked absolutely great week 1. I watched that whole game. In terms of his pass catchers, Thielen had a third of the targets. He had 12 targets, I believe. I think Diggs only got 6 of them, but he got a touchdown. And then Kyle Rudolph at tight end, he was heavily drafted, only got 2 targets. He kind of saved you with a touchdown. I'm not in on Kyle Rudolph facing the team that just held Trey Burton to a light game, but I'm very in on Thielen and Diggs this week.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. The one thing that's even more discouraging about Rudolph is obviously he's coming off that surgery. Was it on his foot, his ankle? I forget now.
I'm not sure.
Coming off that surgery in the preseason, I still kind of question his health. And 2 other tight ends on the team, their names are escaping me, but they both also got the same target share that he did. He will always be a red zone threat, and again with the tight end pool being what it is right now and all the injuries that have already happened, you probably are going to get stuck playing him, but I don't like it at all. And I'm in some leagues where people have been like, if they have 2 tight ends trying to shop Rudolph, if you can shop Rudolph for any sort of value, I say go ahead and do it, because I think that he's going to be a guy where you see a lot of these games where he has 2 catches for less than 30 yards or those like 4 catches where he gets like 26 yards and a touchdown. I don't really ever think he's going to have many like 6+ catch games. And really, with the rest of the pass catchers on the Vikings, it's not really necessary for them to have success.
Yeah, and up until basically the last year and a half, that's what Rudolph has been. He's been a guy who you throw in at tight end and you hope he gets a touchdown. It's really not until the past 2 years or so that he became any more of an option than that. So I wouldn't be surprised if, like you said, post-injury, post-surgery, getting a bit older, like this is the Kyle Rudolph that exists now. because that's what Kyle Rudolph was for the first 5 years of his career too. Oh shit, my beer's foaming over.
Don't quote me on this, and listeners, please don't commit any actions on this. But I will not be shocked if at the end of the year in PPR formats, Eric Ebron has more fantasy points than Kyle Rudolph does.
Whoa. I know we're pro Ebron on this podcast always, but that is definitely a take.
Yeah.
That was one thing Vinny pointed out on the podcast yesterday, to digress real quickly, that me and him both called Jack Doyle getting a shitload of targets and Ebron catching like a random touchdown. We were both just like, yeah, of course that happens.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's move on to the Vikings run game, where it was mostly Dalvin Cook here, and I was skeptical of him. I was wrong. What do you think about Dalvin Cook this week against Green Bay?
Yeah, I'll be honest. It shocked me too. I kind of thought they would ease him in a little bit more. Not only that he's in his sophomore year, but coming off that torn ACL, or it was a torn ACL, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yes.
I was surprised that he got the workload that he did, especially with Latavius Murray being serviceable last season. I don't know if that's something that'll sustain, but I see this game, if Rodgers plays, being kind of close the whole way. So they will go to Dalvin Cook as their bell cow, but if he gets this workload all year, I'm a little concerned about the health, just because of the small sample size you had last year being in the NFL. And I think that they'll realize that at some point and kind of start to ease off. Not in a way where you won't want to play him. He's still going to be a high-end running back 2, low-end running back 1 in my opinion. But I think it's definitely something to keep an eye on. That I'd be shocked if they thought they were going to give him 200 carries this year.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I thought they were going to do way more of it this past week. And if you look at just the box score, you might be like, oh, Latavius had 10 carries. Like, this was kind of a timeshare. Latavius had 14 snaps. They were all at the end of the game. He got the 10 carries because they were up by a score or two. Like, that's what's happening. Latavius salted away the game at the end, but Cook was their guy the entire game when it actually mattered. So yeah, he's I think you could be right there. I think there could be injury risk or even, just sort of lack or letdown risk where, a guy kind of starts out hot, like Kareem Hunt syndrome last year, like where he starts out hot and then kind of falls off a cliff because he's a rookie and they've been feeding him too much and whatever else. So there's definitely a risk for that. But for right now, ride Cook while you got him.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, we don't know how the Rodgers thing is going to shake out. It'll be fine, I think, in the long run. But at some point, I think Minnesota could realize that, like, this division could be theirs for the taking. And that would be even more of a reason to sort of preserve Dalvin Cook a little bit mid-season to kind of keep him healthy for the playoffs that, they should make with the team that they are. So I just think, not that you should ever sit him or anything like that, but, the workload and the split that happened in week 1, I'm not sure if that's something that'll carry on as consistently as people might think going forward.
Yeah, and to your point, I think it's less of a maybe you should sit Dalvin and more of maybe you should keep Latavius on the back of your bench just in case.
That's a great point too. I would phrase it that way for sure.
All right, cool. Let's move on to Green Bay. At this point, it is unclear whether or not Aaron Rodgers is going to play. If he does play, it's a tough matchup anyway. If you drafted Rodgers, though, you're playing him, right?
Yeah. I mean, as a Packer fan, I hope DeShone Kizer plays because that guy is great. No, not true. If Rodgers is starting, is playing, obviously you have to start him. The one thing that I can say about the Rodgers injury for fantasy owners that you might be thinking of is that if you were a guy like Vinny, I'm looking at you when I'm saying this, that had Geronimo Allison sitting on your bench and was like, oh, I'm going to play this dude in week 2. That if Rodgers is questionable or isn't playing, that might scare you off that, which may be a good call overall. But as far as you got to play Rodgers, as far as guys like Cobb and Adams, though, Cobb had a good showing, I thought, too, better than I had thought he would going into the year. Are you still rolling those guys out regardless of who the starting quarterback is?
Man, it's tough for me. I think Adams, no matter what, I think Cobb, you can make an argument that if DeShone Kizer plays, you don't play him. And that's just because Cobb had a lot of, he had that long play. I think he played a little bit above his expectation based on the workload. And to be fair, I don't remember exactly who had what, but the target share among the 3 wide receivers was 10, 8, and 8. So they're all kind of in the same situation. Adams, I think you're playing just because if you drafted him, you probably have to. But yeah, if Rodgers doesn't go, I don't think I'm playing any other Packer than Adams.
Okay. The only other thing that I'll say on that is that Adams is actually pretty banged up and didn't practice today. And an interesting quote that I saw was that he said he's optimistic to play week 2, which was something that I did not really want to hear or saw coming. I kind of thought that it was just a mild injury, but apparently he landed on his shoulder pretty bad, and that's banged up. Not saying that should have, if Adams is active, like you just said, go ahead. But, you see when guys like Kaiser come in, and you saw it for a little tick when he did, that Cobb, and even at the end of the game, the Packers have always done this, that when it comes down to crunch time, and I think they'll be playing a lot more close games than Packer fans are used to this year, he's the guy that they go to, over the middle and short games and things like that. And when you see inexperienced quarterbacks, especially in systems that they're not used to, like DeShone Kizer is in his first year in Green Bay, that they will work the middle of the field and short and often. And I could definitely see Cobb becoming a little more of a factor solely for his versatility. So I still kind of like Cobb more on like the middle wide receiver 3 conversation, but in PPR formats, obviously if Rodgers goes with Kaiser, you probably have better options, but I wouldn't hate on someone throwing Cobb in the lineup.
Okay. That's those are some really good points and ones that I didn't really think of or wasn't aware of. So listen to Rodgers over me on this one. Let's talk about the tight end. Jimmy Graham only saw 4 targets this past week. I think only had 1 catch out of it. What do you think about Graham going forward and then this week against the Vikings?
I haven't liked Graham at all year. It's like a weird myth with people that Aaron Rodgers loves his tight end because people are still living in like the Jermichael Finley era. He's not really been working through the tight ends that much throughout the couple years, or the last couple of years that he's been there, and or when he's been healthy. So with Jimmy Graham, I like his potential, and again, we'll always stress this tight end pool. I think he's always good for a touchdown in any given game, but I really don't think he's got a top like 8 tight end year in him. I really don't.
Yeah, so I think in terms of if you drafted Graham, and if you didn't do it for this reason, then you were misguided. But if you drafted Graham, you weren't looking for the high target volume. You were looking for the high touchdown equity. So you were thinking Graham is going to score 9+ touchdowns this year, and that is why I'm drafting him here. And if you were thinking he's going to get 100+ targets, you're probably wrong. So the fact that he got 4 targets in the first game doesn't really scare me. The Vikings cornerbacks are good, and we just saw George Kittle get a lot of targets against the Vikings team. So I think there's a chance he gets a little bit more usage this game. But yeah, you're looking for touchdowns with Graham. You're not looking for 7 catches for 80 yards. It's just like a very different mindset in terms of tight end play than the rest of the top end tight ends. So
yeah,
I'm fine with rolling him out for sure. And I'm not worried, but if you drafted him because you thought it was going to be 7 catches, 80 yards every week, you were wrong about that.
Yeah, and there's a reason that when the Packers were mounting that fat ass comeback, that he wasn't really involved in, the hurry up offense, and they're still running a plethora of 3 wide receiver sets. When some people that drafted Graham were like, okay, take Adams aside, Jimmy Graham is the best pass catcher on this team. That's not how the Packers view him, I don't think. I think you're right in the sense that he's a red zone target, possibly even a red zone decoy in a lot of situations. Like, why did they go and sign Lance Kendricks and Mercedes Lewis still? They're not lining Graham up outside that much, and they're still running Allison on a good amount of snaps. And if they had faith in Graham to, like you said, be a 7-catch-a-game guy, they wouldn't be doing that as much. And if they did, it would change their whole offensive scheme over the last few years.
Yeah, it's an interesting conundrum. Yeah, if you've got Graham, I mean, keep rolling him out, but be aware of the situation there, and be aware that there's a lot of bust in the boom and bust of him. That's right. Jimmy Graham has a lot of bust. He's got big ass titties. No. So anyway, guys, with that being said, let's pick this one, Rodgers. Who you got?
I miss having podcast beers with you. Ooh, I got to take the Pack, but I'm going to take the under just because these games tend to be sloppier than anticipated.
Okay, I'm taking Minnesota and the over in hope that Aaron Rodgers plays.
Well, screw you for getting the game wrong and the name wrong.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I fucking suck. Anyway, we are going to take a quick break. We are going to hear from Auction Draft, and we will be right back with 4 more games. All right, guys, that was Auction Draft. Make sure you're checking them out with that promo code LTFF. It'll get you 50% off your league. Again, 5-week seasons. You just heard it. You don't need me to repeat it. I don't know why I'm doing it. Rogers, let's talk about the Chargers at the Bills. The Chargers are a 7-point road favorite. The over-under is 43. That's not very high. We have been starting with the road team first the past couple of games, but we're going to start with the home team here because the only notable thing about Buffalo is that they're starting Josh Allen, and that's not even that notable. You shouldn't start a single Bill, right?
Yeah, all right. I'm glad you said that because the only other talking point I really had on the Bills was like, you got to sit McCoy, right, man? Come on.
Yeah, get him the fuck out of there. He was a bad draft pick, and now you shouldn't be starting him until we know that he can do anything, and the Chargers are good.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, let me ask you this. With a rookie quarterback, I always think this, and again, I'm trying to like talk to the people that are getting screwed by tight ends that drafted guys like Greg Olsen and why is it the other guy that's Delaney Walker?
Yes.
With a rookie quarterback coming in, does Charles Clay like tempt you at all?
Fuck no. I mean,
not really me either, but I just figured it was worth mentioning because he's got like decent projections on a lot of the fantasy sites compared to a lot of waiver tight ends, and I kind of just wanted to bring that up as a talking point of being like, go for someone with a better quarterback, but just wanted to ask you that.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair. In terms of people we've already talked about, we didn't even mention Austin Hooper in the Atlanta game. I would rather play Austin Hooper than Charles Clay. That's kind of where I'm at there. Let's talk about the Chargers. Phillip Rivers had a huge fucking week 1, but he threw the ball 51 times. You wouldn't think that would happen against this bad Bills defense. Do you like Phillip this week? Do you think it's Alex Smith, high floor, low ceiling? Like, what do you think here?
I think he's got a little bit of a higher ceiling just because this is probably going to be the best matchup, even though it's a road matchup, like of the season for Phillip Rivers or anybody for that matter. The Bills are the worst team in football. I think you definitely got to roll him out there. That's all I can say.
Yeah, got to start him pretty much. In terms of his pass catchers, obviously Keenan is a stud. I don't think we need to go too far into that. Talk to me about. Yeah, that's he's really good. Behind that, we've got this interesting sort of carousel of wide receivers with Mike Williams, Tyrell Williams, Travis Benjamin. And then you've got their weird tight end situation with Antonio Gates. Talk to me about these pass catchers. Do you like any of them? Are you very against any of them? What are your opinions here?
Yeah, I'm kind of against all of them. I think this is a situation like we had spoken about before with Ryan Grant a little bit, where like if you're holding on to Mike Williams, you're just living in the past. And I guess he's got maybe more potential than, Tyrell Williams, who we've seen, even though he caught the touchdown, and Travis Benjamin. But like, when are you ever going to put that guy in your lineup until you see like 3 weeks of sustainable value? So to me, when there's guys on the waiver wire that, like with Seahawks receivers that are out there, if there's Tyler Lockett's out there, things like that have the potential to carve out a serious role with their team going forward. Like, why are you going to let Mike Williams just die on your bench and never really use him? I don't really like any of them.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. All 3 of these guys had more than 50% of the snaps on the field. None of them had more than 6 targets. The other 2 who didn't have 6 targets had 5. So it seems like, someone's going to catch a touchdown. Someone might catch a deep ball. Good luck predicting who it's going to be on a week-to-week basis. And until we see someone getting over the sort of 75% to 80% snap rate, I don't see a reason to own or play any of them.
I agree. And to that point too, those guys that like got vegetables thrown at them when they drafted Mike Williams and then saw the 5 catches for 81 yards and are like, yeah, I'll be the smartest guy in that room. Like, he was 4th of the wide receiving core in snap share. So I think that's a little bit of a fluky situation. I think Tyrell Williams could have the same game next year and then next week, and Travis Benjamin will have that game in week 4. It's not going to be predictable.
Yeah, completely there with you. Let's talk about the running backs. Melvin Gordon used pretty heavily, 15 carries, 26% of Rivers targets. He led the team in targets more than Keenan Allen, and he was in on 72% of snaps. He looks great. I think we can both agree that he should be started week to week. I think the interesting question here is, what do you think about Austin Ekeler, who isn't used as much, but he's very good, he's very efficient, and he got a touchdown this week.
Yeah, I'm so mad that you said that because one, yeah, Melvin, and also is it just me or does Melvin Gordon? I'm just like going off feeling here. Does he not play well against the Chiefs normally? And when I say not well, I mean average.
I'm not sure. I would have to look into it further, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, he had 102 yards receiving, so I'm not saying that. But there was a common thing at my drunken football parties for week one where I just kept yelling, Austin Ekeler? What? Why Austin Ekeler? No. Why the ball to Austin Ekeler? That's not right. But I think in this situation, I'm glad you asked, and I hope to God you're not in a situation where you got to play him. But especially against this game that could possibly against this team where there could be a blowout, I think that Austin Ekeler has some serious value. Congratulations to you if you have the balls to play him, man. But I think that it could pay off.
Yeah. So here's where I am with Ekeler. I was thinking about this for a while. I think he's the Tevin Coleman to Melvin Gordon's Devontae Freeman, and this is, I'm talking like past years, where like Freeman has been the automatic start, and then Coleman's been a guy that you can play in your flex if you need to. I think that's almost where we're at with these two guys, where they're both getting so much work and they're both so good. That Gordon's an auto start. Eckler's a guy who can fill in if you need him.
Yeah, and I think you can't trust that for another 2 weeks. But I that is not a shocking statement or something that I would disagree with whatsoever. And again, it goes back to the point where we just sort of discussed their wide receiving core and how like mediocre and underwhelming they are. They're serviceable as a football wide receiving core, but I could totally see this as Philip Rivers ages a little bit more than people probably realize that this offense sort of rotates more through Keenan Allen being a stud in that backfield.
Yeah, absolutely could see that. I have one question. We shouldn't spend too much time on it because it's not related to this game at all.
No, don't play Antonio Gates. Oh.
So the question is, do you think, and this is more of a theoretical throughout the season, it's more of just a thought exercise. Do you think there's a point where Ekeler is so good that he starts like actually eating into Melvin Gordon and Melvin Gordon becomes less valuable because of it?
Yes, I do. And solely just because of Melvin Gordon's slight injury history that I think the Chargers are going to be, again, kind of what I said with Dalvin Cook and Latavius Murray the other day, that they could be a fringe playoff team this year. And that at some point people are going to, or the coaching staff is just going to be like, yo, this is a good player as well. Let's preserve both of these guys and just run this two-headed monster like the Falcons have done in the past.
That's okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. Comparison is great, actually, I think, because it mirrors this backfield a lot.
Yeah, it's it makes some sense there. I'm taking the Chargers and I'm taking the under.
I will take the Chargers and the over.
All right. Is that because the Chargers are going to score 44 points and the over-under is 43? Or
yeah, no, I still think I didn't want to say it before, but I still think that Josh Allen's going to throw a touchdown to Charles fucking Clay, dude. It's gonna.
Jeez. All right. We'll move on to the next game. We got Houston at Tennessee. There's no like firm line yet. I saw a couple lines come out with Houston as a 2-point favorite here, and I think the over-under of 45. But there's no like real firm line yet, basically due to Mariota's injury. Now Mariota's potentially out. I think he practiced today, so that's a good sign. We'll sort of see what happens going forward, and then obviously you guys probably know that Delanie Walker is out for the year at this point. So since we talked about him, let's start on the Tennessee side. If Mariota plays, is there any reason to play him?
No, I don't think so at all.
Okay, cool. And then let's talk about his pass catchers briefly. Are you on any of them?
Yeah, I still like Corey Davis. He got a great target share. And again, we were talking average depth of target before. It's getting a little deeper than it was in the past. It obviously is more so if Mariota's healthy that I would like to play Corey Davis. But honestly, even if Gabbert goes, I'm totally down with rolling Corey Davis out there. Teams are still going to throw the ball. When teams suck, they're still going to throw the ball, and even more so when they're losing by a lot. So, I mean, his catch percentage wasn't too great. I believe he had 14 targets. I can't really remember right now.
13.
13?
Yeah.
Cool. And but one thing I wanted to say about the pass catchers, someone that I think is a little bit interesting, not to play, but to pick up is Taiwan. Did you say Taiwan? Taiwan.
Taywan Taylor.
Yeah, Taywan Taylor. He's obviously that slot, middle of the field speedster. Mike Vrabel made a point of saying this week that he wants to get him a lot more snaps. He wasn't really a factor at all this past week, but again, with Delanie Walker out, this team's going to want to develop offense through something. So I think that this is a speculative waiver ad that I don't really hate, just solely because volume could start to go his way as the season progresses. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a very fair point. You can get Taywan Taylor off the waiver for nothing. For me, the waiver out is Jonnu Smith at tight end. I mean, if you lost Delanie Walker, then he should be the guy getting all of his snaps. So I'm fine with like adding him. I don't think you need to play him. And then I completely agree with you on Corey Davis. I was almost trying to trick you because he had a very pedestrian stat line of 6 for 62, but he had those 13 targets, and anyone who's getting 13 targets is worth playing on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, I agree, especially with the muddy situation that was week 1.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about these running backs. Dion Lewis. If you listen to me and Vinny, we said that he should have been drafted before Derrick Henry before the year. I'll take a fucking victory lap on that one. Probably too early.
Presumptuous, dude.
What's up?
I said that's not even presumptuous. That's like a thing.
Yeah. I mean, he doubled the snaps of him. He had 16 carries and 8 targets versus Derrick Henry had 10 carries, no targets. I'll give a slight concession to Derrick Henry. Had a 60-yard rushing touchdown called back on a phantom holding call. It was called on Delanie Walker. Delanie Walker was literally getting face masked on the play. He didn't hold anyone. So if that play doesn't get called back, we have a very, very different perception of this backfield. But Dion Lewis was still on the field for double of the snaps, had more carries, had a touchdown, and had 8 targets.
Yeah, Dion Lewis is a running back too, dude. And don't listen to the reports that Derrick Henry is just extremely afraid of thunderstorms and lightning. Because I've read that. That's not true. That's not true at all. But as a Derrick Henry owner in some other leagues, that's what I've told some people about his poor performance. And feel free to ride with that. He's just really, really afraid of thunder and lightning. But no, I'm sitting Derrick Henry this week, dude. Dion Lewis is a sick-ass middle-of-the-pack running back too, I think.
Yeah, I'm right there on that. It is kind of what it is at this point, and we'll see how the rest of it plays out. It's also worth noting, like, then this is in general with like that Tennessee Miami game, because we'll get to Miami in the second podcast of these two. Or no, we'll actually get to it in this one. Never mind. So nothing that we like say about week 1 in this could be like, everything could be wrong because that game was just like fucked up and stupid. You know, it lasted 7 hours. Like, who knows what the fuck's going to happen going forward. That being said, let's move on to Houston in this game. What do you think about Deshaun Watson after an okay week 1?
I've had concerns about Deshaun Watson the entire time. Like, when you come off that injury as a quarterback, we're seeing the same sort of situation with Carson Wentz in your rookie year, where like that's a sketchy thing to overcome. And he didn't look good in his first time out. I don't really have a lot of faith in him. Again, if you drafted him, the price that you paid, you need to justify to yourself and your fantasy league and God and continue to play him. But if there's any trade value that you can have with Deshaun Watson, I think you do it, because I am not encouraged by, 1, that performance, and 2, like all the other variables that surround him and that team. I don't like it at all. And the rushing will not be there like it once was. And I think this game was kind of indicative of that as well.
Yeah, it's hard to base too much off of 1 week, and particularly against New England, who's very good at scheming for specific things and scheming to kind of fuck up young players, if that makes sense.
Sorry to cut you off. Yeah, but sorry, if you remember last year against New England was his fucking coming out party. Like, he tore them up last season.
Yeah, that is very true. We'll kind of see. Oh, sorry. I thought I lost you there for a second. But we'll see how he does going forward. Good. All right, cool. We'll see how he does going forward. Yeah, I think he should be okay this week against the Tennessee secondary, which isn't really that good. And if you drafted him, you're probably starting him. But I really don't hate your idea of trading him to someone who's higher on him than you are. But then again, if you drafted him, who's higher than him
Yeah.
than you are in your league? But all right. All right, let's talk about Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins saw about 30% of the targets, and he's really the only passing game target who I think is really worth playing for the Texans at this point. What do you think about Hopkins going forward?
Yeah, I like Hopkins. I still think, again, it's just straight volume. That's one of the most important metrics in fantasy football. The volume will always be there. If you think Deshaun Watson and the Texans suck, that means that DeAndre Hopkins will get a bunch of volume. The question that I'll ask you on Hopkins, because I think we both kind of agree, you're never going to sit him. On the other end of this passing game, Will Fuller might play this week. I'm sure I know your feelings on him because you hate that touchdown rate of last year.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think against this bad secondary, that if he goes, it's worth, like, if you're strapped at the flex position to throw him out there? Like, I'm gonna put it this way: I'm a guy that had Marquise Goodwin and Doug Baldwin as my wide receiver 2 and 3 in a league.
Ah, fuck.
But like, are you gonna throw Fuller out there in a situation like that?
Yeah, I think it's completely justified to do that.
Okay.
I think it's completely okay because, again, Fuller's a guy who can make his worth in one play. So you don't need him to get 9 targets. You need him to get 3 targets and take one of them for a 60-yard touchdown, which is definitely doable against this Tennessee secondary, which is pretty easy to get behind. I'll also say in the past game that if Fuller sits, Bruce Ellington got 8 targets and a touchdown last week. Like, that's not the worst.
No, I agree. Again, and I think that's more of a conversation where I think you'll probably agree with this too, where it's like, maybe don't play that guy in your fantasy season long leagues,
Maybe in DFS.
Yeah, DFS, that's fine. That's a good play possibly. But I mean, definitely worth an ad. I'm always more season long minded. DFS, it could be a really sweet play. But if Fuller's inactive and this turns to be a recurring thing, may not be the worst idea to stash a guy like Ellington, because there has to be a second pass catcher that emerges out of that offense.
Yeah, you would think there's got to be at some point. Let's talk about Lamar Miller. He was in on 77% of snaps, had 20 carries and 2 targets, but Alfred fucking Blue got the touchdown. Are you still okay with him this week? Do you think it's a bad start? Like, I don't know. What are your opinions here?
I don't know. Lamar Miller, for some reason, is like the most bland, boring person in fantasy.
Dude, I feel like he's the guy who, when you're like debating on starting a player, like like a running back, the question you should ask is, would I start him over Lamar Miller this week? Like, that's because he's the guy who's like, this is the borderline starter,
Yeah. Yeah. He is the threshold of running back 20 every week to me. So, yeah, I mean, I'm going to roll them out there still, again, like you said, because I just think they're a better team than the Titans. And when you're looking at a fringe running back, if they're playing an inferior team, that's when you play that dude, especially a guy like Lamar Miller. But again, I would not count on 20 points.
Yeah, I'm the same with you on that. I think I pretty much agree with that. We don't have a line here, but let's pick it outright. I am taking Houston.
All right, for the sake of fun stuff, I'll take the Titans and Blaine Gabbert.
Blaine Gabbert, geez. All right. Let's move on to Kansas City at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is a 5.5-point favorite, over under of 53. I feel like we could say a lot about this one, but I think the only thing we really have to say is play everyone. Am I wrong here?
No, I don't think you are. So let's divert this into a conversation that's a little bit sidetrack. Is that, what do you do with Bell, dude?
I don't know.
This is something that affects every single fantasy league. So
yeah, I mean, so now people are saying he might come back week 4. I don't know the reasons for that. I just hear people saying it. Before, it was like he'll come back week 11, at which point it's like, I don't know what the fuck you do there. I mean, honestly, dude, don't own Bell anywhere. I haven't had to think about it really deeply. You have. Tell me what you think.
All right, so put it this way. To put it into context, is I got offered today in a league Alfred Morris for Le'Veon Bell, which was a slap to my ass. Dude, it did not feel good to hear that sentence or read that text. But one thing I'll say is don't do that. Don't do something like that. I pray to God that you have James Conner for your sake if you have Le'Veon Bell. Boy, bringing up God way too much in this podcast. But that's how you feel when you're a Le'Veon Bell owner this year. You got to really bring yourself back to God. But regardless of that, if you're going to trade him, you have to get something that is a good return that you are willing to put into your starting lineup every single week. And be willing to eat the fact that he could come back in week 4, like Walsh just stated. You have to be confident in your decision. Don't sell short if you know that he might come back and that you'll kick yourself all way. It's such a hard it's the hardest situation in fantasy, I think, in the last few seasons. If I can really say it that way, would you agree? I mean, What do you do?
So I have a question for you because it's a guy that we were just talking about. If someone today offered you, not Alfred Morris, but if someone said Dion Lewis for Le'Veon Bell right now, do you do that?
And this is also, let me just put context. You don't have James Conner in this situation, obviously.
Okay. Right.
Because if you have James Conner, then no one's going to want to do anything substantial for Bell anyway.
Yeah, it changes the equation completely.
I would say, yes, I would do that trade for the sole purpose that I think Dion Lewis has the capability season long to be a top 15 running back, especially in PPR formats. So it's worth it because you're going to be losing weeks with Bell rotting on your bench. Anything lower than like a high-end running back 2 is not worth it to me. I would do Dion Lewis solely because if Bell gets active week 4 or whatever, I can feel comfortable watching Dion Lewis put up 14 points in a game when Bell puts up 18. Something like that. I would prefer to get like a bench wide receiver or something, some little cushion on the end of that, not straight up. But yeah, I think I would do that trade.
So then you're not taking like Lamar Miller for him?
No, because Lamar Miller is not going to win me my fantasy league. Dion Lewis might.
I like where your head's at. I think you're in the correct mindset for that. I think you're pretty much dead on.
Yeah, I'll phrase it that way. Trade for somebody that has the potential to win you your league.
Yes. I think that's a good way of looking at it. And then if you can't get that, then keep him and hope for the best.
Yep. And then trade him for Alfred Morris in week 9.
and then swallow your pride and trade for Alfred Morris on your 3-8 team or 3-5 team. But yeah, so to get back to this game for just one moment to clarify, when I say play everyone, I mean you play on the KC side. I think you play Mahomes, Hunt, Tyreek, Kelsey. And then on the Pittsburgh side, I think you're playing Ben, Connor, Antonio Brown, and Juju Smith-Schuster. Does that make sense to you?
Yes. So I'll bank it off with one question on that for teams struggling to find a tight end. Do you think Jesse James is worth it?
No.
Coming off 5 targets, 3 catches for 60 yards. Not great. You don't think so?
So I think there's just other guys for me. I think Jared Cook. Yeah. I think Ricky Seals-Jones. Like these guys that we will and have talked about. I don't think you need to dig that deep. Yep. Another guy right there. So
yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's just a question people have kind of been throwing around, and I agree with you, but I just thought that people might be thinking it.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. Let's pick this game. This is a tough one for me.
I'll go first then. I'll go Kansas City in the under.
I think I'm going to go Kansas City in the over. Okay. But betting the over on a 53-point game is generally a losing proposition. But anyway.
This game should just be solely decided by Tyreek Hill and Antonio Brown having a foot race. And then that's it.
That's the only thing that happens. I like that. Yeah. All right, guys. We got one more game in this podcast, and then we're going to get to a couple of questions, and we'll call it a day. We'll be back with part 2 after that. So Miami at the Jets. Miami and the Jets. Sorry, that sucked. The Jets.
That was kind of cool.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. The Jets are a 3-point favorite here. Really surprisingly, the over-under is only 44. Miami side of the ball, they're another team I feel like we didn't learn that much about because they had that weird-ass 7-hour game. Um, I guess the guys that you're considering playing here are Kenny Stills, who had a huge game, and then Kenyon Drake probably. But what do you think about the wide Stills and the wide receivers here?
Yeah, well, Devontae Parker may play this week.
Oh,
I read the
really? I
update
didn't know
on.
that.
Yeah, well, he was last week. He was limited in one practice and was listed as doubtful. And I think he was limited in practice either today or yesterday, probably today. But he had like a full cast on that broken finger, so I don't really think it's indicative of his status for the upcoming week. But I think either way, Kenny Stills is a good play. And I think I'm bringing that up more to say, like, don't play Devontae Parker either way, because apparently, like, the Dolphins' stance on this is like we're really afraid that like he's just going to take a heater pass and re-break that finger.
Right.
So just don't be tempted to do that. And then as far as Kenyon Drake, yeah, sure. I mean, we saw the Lions don't have a great run game, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But like they did nothing on the ground against the Jets defense. The Jets front four is not good. I'm not saying that it is, but Kenyon Drake, I think, is like only a tick below Lamar Miller for me. Honestly, I'd rather play Lamar Miller than Kenyon Drake, and Kenyon Drake is just someone I've been off all year, so I don't love it, but it probably makes sense for the team you drafted him to.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have a single bit of Kenyon Drake this year. I avoided him completely. I think he's
Oh yeah,
obviously the better option than Gore, but he's not a must play week to week for sure. In terms of the wide receivers, I think it's interesting that Kenny Stills actually only had 5 targets in this past game. I know he had 4 catches for 106 yards and 2 touchdowns. But Jakeem Grant had 7 targets. Danny Amendola had 6. Stills was still on the field for over 90% of the snaps, and no other receiver got more than 75%. But like, I think his huge game is getting a little overblown. I know if he's on the field, he doesn't need all that many targets to have a big game, but the fact that Kenny Stills had 100 yards doesn't mean that he's like a wide receiver 1 or like a high end wide receiver 2 all of a sudden.
right. Yeah, I think in the long term that's true. But again, I think if Parker sits, especially and is questionable health, I think you kind of got him, roll him out there after that week 1. If you played him already, like don't take out a decent wide receiver 3 on your team if Kenny Stills was the bench guy for you. But if you drafted your team around Kenny Stills being in your starting lineup, feel confident in rolling him back out there in this situation, I think.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. On the Jets side of the ball, I think it was really hard to really judge what this team is like just because that was such a blowout. And on the running back side, Bilal Powell and Isaiah Crowell each got about 40% of the snaps. No wide receiver was on the field for more than 67% of the snaps. And even with that, Quincy Enunwa ended up with about half of Sam Darnold's targets. So I don't know what the fuck to take out of any of this besides that Quincy Enunwa should be owned.
Yeah, Quincy Enunwa should be owned. I've always loved Quincy Enunwa. And one thing that I'll bank off that point, I've been like, I looked at this receiving core and I was like, don't play any of these guys. Look for a reason to not play any of these guys. Then I was like, oh my God, Jermaine Kearse is now full participant in practice. This is the
There you
perfect
go.
reason to play any of these dudes. Own them. Like you don't have to own Jermaine Kearse. Quincy Enunwa, if he's on the waivers, which he probably is, pick that dude up. But don't necessarily play him unless you're really, really desperate in this situation. Because Jermaine Kearse, we've seen him be relevant for them, not for Darnold. But I think it's a good deterrent to making a bad decision.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. With the running backs, I think Powell has the higher floor. Crowell has the higher ceiling. I don't particularly want to play either of them, but I think Powell's the guy to play of the two.
Yeah, it concerned me a lot with Crowell that in a rout of the Lions that Powell got more carries. And
Yeah.
I mean, look at Crowell's day if he doesn't break off that 60-something touchdown run that he did. I mean, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad when you draft a guy who's maybe your running back 4, or if you own Le'Veon Bell like me in a league and you had to start him, and you're like, whoa, in a game where they completely surprised the Lions on the road, that if he didn't have that one break-off run that seemed a little bit fluky when the Lions were like completely frazzled, that he would have had a really, really average day that could have screwed you over.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the way Crowell is going to be all year. He's going to be very low ceiling, very low floor, with that high ceiling because he can break big touchdown runs.
Yeah.
Who you got in this one?
Man. I can't pick the Jets being from Jersey and knowing all the Jets fans that I know, so I'm going to take Miami in the under.
I'm going to take the Jets in the under. Um,
Um,
sorry.
that's
But anyway, let's get to a couple questions before we close it out. So the first one is through Instagram from Manny. There's a trade offer. He would be giving Gurley and Mike Williams. He would be getting Odell Beckham Jr. and Kareem Hunt. Yeah, fucking do that.
Yeah, I would say in this vacuum do that. But like who's trading away Gurley? Like what are you doing, dude?
Yeah, that's true.
Like I mean I say do this trade still if you're on the OBJ Hunt side, but just don't why are you trying to trade Gurley after week 1, man?
Yeah,
Tell your friend
that's a good point. Yeah, I think in a vacuum I would do it, but you definitely make a good point there.
that. Yeah.
Second question through Instagram from Jameson1667. We got a trade offer here. I don't know which side he's on, but it is Adams and Carson. That's Devontae and Chris Carson for Larry Fitzgerald and TJ Yeldon. Um, I think
Mm.
the Adams and Carson side wins that.
Yeah, just because I mean unless you own Fournette, it, Chris Carson's role is a little more secure than Yeldon's is. I mean, Chris Carson is the one I mean, Adams and Fitz you could kind of equate in a little bit of a way. You could say they're a wash, even though Adams has a slight edge to me. But Carson is the one that has the best chance of being a starter. So
Yeah,
I think that side wins as well.
yeah. All right, and then the last one here through Facebook. So we got Adrian Peterson versus the Colts or Alex Collins at the Bengals this week. 1 point PPR. Who you got here?
I think this week I'm taking AP, but for the season I'm taking Alex Collins.
Very much agreed on both points. It's AP this week for the season, though. Alex Collins for sure.
Heck.
All right, that's going to do it for part one of the week 2 preview. We'll be back with part 2. You'll probably be hearing it the day after you hear this one. We're going to record it right after, though, so get ready for that. Anyway, guys, it's been fun. We'll be back with these next 8 games. Rogers, you got anything to leave the people with?
No, man. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, it's great to have you back for the first one of the season, and we'll have you back for the second one in a couple minutes here. So for Rogers, I am Walsh. Later, podcast.
All
All
right, I
right.
gotta piss so bad and
Yeah,
get beers.
yeah, me too. I got to do both of those.
All right, we'll reconvene in 5.
Thank you.
Did you hear me laughing?
I did.
Sorry.
You good? still got to keep going on it. Yeah, we got another couple games to do, so I'll be a little bit longer. Sorry.
Wonder what Always Sunny's gonna be about. Wonder what Always Sunny's gonna be about.
Yeah. With Washington on that.
Yeah.
Actually, they'll try to make this one a bit shorter.
My bad.
Hello.
My friends were calling me. I had to call them back from the freaking birthday thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I do not care about this.
Yeah.
But, all right,
All
I'm
right.
good.
I don't have nearly as many notes for this one, so it'll probably be a bit shorter.
1 sec. As you can tell, I don't have notes really either.
Yeah, that's all right.
Word. All right, I'm good.
All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Let's Talk Fantasy Football. I am your host tonight. My name is Nick Walsh, and I am here with episode number 2 of my good friend Matt Rogers. Rogers, what's going on?
Not much. Episode 2 will be just as good as episode 1, I'm sure.
Yeah, hopefully. Unless you think episode 1 sucked, you probably already listened to it by this point, in which case it's going to be better. Either way, it might be better. But anyway, Rogers, we are talking about the second half of games for week 2. If you haven't heard part 1 of this, go back and listen to it. If you hadn't heard the recap of week 1, go back and listen to that too. You got a lot of things to listen to, apparently. Or maybe you don't. Maybe this is the only thing you have to listen to. But Rogers, before we get too deep into this, I do want to let everyone know that we are brought to you by Auction Draft. So while the NFL season may have officially kicked off, your hopes of drafting a fantasy team for 2018 is not gone. With Auction Draft, you can draft your team at any time, and you can have a 5-week season with your friends. That way, when you pay too much for Le'Veon Bell, hoping he shows up, you get another shot to get it right in 5 weeks. And again, you can sign up now by going to letstalkfantasyfootball.com/auction draft. Use that promo code LTFF and save 50% on your league. So, Rogers, we have some teams to talk about. We have some games to talk about. It should be interesting. I guess let's get right into it. And so we're going to start here with Philadelphia at Tampa Bay. We just saw Tampa Bay do an extremely unexpected thing and hang 48 points on the Saints. Now they are going back home. Philly's still a 3-point favorite. The over-under is 44. So Vegas apparently doesn't think that we're going to get a repeat of the 48-40 game that Tampa Bay just played. Let's start on the Philly side, though. You would think that Foles would have to play better than he did last week because he played pretty bad. Do you have any interest in him this week? Did you catch that?
No, not at all. Especially if I hope you don't own him, but if, there's people stashing Wentz, obviously, but, pick him up. His value is going to be gone soon. There's better quarterback plays out there.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that. It's difficult to justify starting him, but I think you can justify starting Nelson Agholor and Zach Ertz. Both of them had 10 targets this past week. You'd expect about the same this week. Do you have any other interests in the Philly passing game?
No, not really. There's not even really many speculative ads out there as far as I'm concerned. You kind of just talked about anybody that's relevant. I think the Eagles offense, especially the passing game, is pretty clear cut. But something I wanted to ask you real quick is like, what do you think about people holding on to Wentz, man? Like, if you were a guy that held on to Wentz and you probably drafted a guy like Phillip Rivers or Patrick Mahomes to like get you through this interim, um, those guys might end up having better seasons. You think?
Yeah. I mean, I don't see the reason to hold on to Wentz. I guess unless you like need to pick up a running back or wide receiver or something like that. Like, I guess you can hold on to him. It all depends on how much bench room you have. But like, yeah, there are guys like Mahomes, Rivers, even like an Andy Dalton, like might have a better season than Carson Wentz this year. Like, it's not out of the question. So I don't think you need to hold him by any means.
Yeah.
What do you think about Jay Ajayi? Not used at all in the past game this past week, but he did get 15 carries, got in the end zone twice. Are you rolling him out again this week?
Yeah, I think you got to roll him out, especially with, I mean, Alvin Kamara is way better than Jay Ajayi, but, the Tampa Bay defense, even though in that win, they did not look good at all. One thing I will say on Ajayi, though, going forward, maybe with the way the running back two pool is kind of shaken out, you will, but I don't think that his performance this week one or like overall is very sustainable to be a must play all week. Pretty sure he played like less than half the offensive snaps. On opening night, everyone's watching this game. People are like, if you drafted J.J. shit, Darren Sproles still matters so much. He'll still be on the field a lot. Like J.J. will be a factor, but, I don't think you can trust him as a running back too. I would look to trade J.J. if I own him, but that's coming from a guy that was really kind of off him in the offseason or the preseason.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, 2 touchdowns in week one is what gave him the week that he had. Like it's not like we're looking at a guy who is coming out and getting 18 carries and 4 targets a week. No targets, 15 carries. It's and it's just as likely that those touchdowns go to Aguilar and Ertz next game because neither of them got any week one. So if Jay Ajayi doesn't have those 2 touchdowns, we're viewing him completely different, as you would. So yeah, I think you're right. You're dead on with that, where he just has such a low floor. It's going to make him difficult to start every single week. But you're probably rolling him out for now.
Yeah. And there's also, sorry, real quick. There's a reason why like Corey Clement is still relatively relevant, if that makes sense. I still think the Eagles like him overall. And, if Jay Ajayi gets a little bit banged up or like isn't as productive as he was, especially at the goal line in the future, I could still see Corey Clement kind of having some value in this offense. Maybe not fantasy value as much, but definitely enough to like chip into Ajayi's value for sure.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, this backfield was like a four-way rotation last year. It would make complete sense for me for it to be a three-way rotation this year. So, yeah, I'm Ajayi's the guy to play if you're going to play a Philly running back, but make sure your expectations are set where they should be. His floor is 12 carries for like 27 yards, Yeah. That's what you're looking at.
Sure.
On the Tampa Bay side of the ball, are you buying into Ryan Fitzpatrick? Please tell me you're not.
Well, no. In DFS maybe, but in season long, it's not something that you should count on at all. I think I'm definitely buying into the fact that Jameis Winston doesn't have to play this year. But yeah, I don't think it's worth the gamble. There's a lot safer owns. I'm not going to say plays because this week, like it may be, if you're screwed, could make sense, but I don't like it. But there's better owns out there for quarterbacks going forward than Ryan Fitzpatrick. It's not sustainable.
Yeah, I'm very much not about it. I'm also really not about any Tampa Bay running backs. I don't think you should start Peyton Barber at all this week. Do you?
No, just because there's better options. But again, like we kind of spoke about on the last podcast for the week one preview or week two preview, listen to that if you haven't, like I said before. But again, it's just a sheer volume situation. It's not a great matchup, but like there's Peyton Barber is going to get a lot more carries than running backs in a lot of fantasy lineups this week. So that's the only way that I would justify it. And also, he in a backfield that makes sense to be more of a committee situation. He really took control of it as far as the workload goes. So you can justify it in that sense, but he's a flex guy, and there's a lot of wide receivers that I'd rather start in that flex is the best way I could kind of say that.
I think that's a good way of looking at it. And the guys behind him, I think you can safely drop. Like, I don't think you need to own Ronald Jones.
No.
But let's talk about these wide receivers.
He was a healthy scratch. Like, don't own him.
Just get rid of him. The wide receivers, I think Evans is obviously a go. Behind that, Deshaun Jackson has a concussion and a shoulder injury and seems doubtful. Do you buy that Godwin could be a decent start this week that I think you can probably just pull off the waiver wire?
Yeah, and solely because – and also if you were, like, intrigued by Deshaun Jackson's week, like, this is probably a blessing in disguise that he's probably not going to play. But I do believe the thought that the wide receiver 2 of the Buccaneers will have value this year. That is what I believe in. And I think Chris Godwin, whether it's – and if Deshaun Jackson's there, it kind of just muddies the situation a little bit more. But I think Chris Godwin definitely has ownership value for sure.
Yeah, I'm very about at least making sure he's owned, and depending on your wide receiver situation, maybe you have some bad matchups, maybe you got some injuries, whatever it may be. I don't think he's the worst start. Who do you got in this game?
I will take Tampa Bay in the over just because they're the home team.
Philly in the under.
Okay.
I refuse to buy Ryan Fitzpatrick. I refuse.
Okay.
I'm not going to do it. Let's move on to Cleveland at New Orleans. So New Orleans here for the second week in a row is one of the biggest spreads of the week. This week they are -8. Last week they were -9.5, and we saw how that worked out. The over-under here is 50, so we're expecting a decent amount of points. On the Cleveland side of the ball, we'll start in the passing game. Jarvis Landry fucking dominated the targets. He had 15 targets this week. I don't know about you. Like, I was really against him this offseason. He's got to be a must start, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's fringing like wide receiver 1 PPR league territory just from that target share. I mean, it's not going to be that drastic going forward, but like that says something. I mean, and again, I'm sure Vinny, I didn't listen shamefully, but Vinny and Don probably talked about how shitty and gross the weather was in this game. So, like, I don't think you can count on exactly what happened going forward, but, like, that's a pretty serious thing with Jarvis Landry. And Tyrod arguably may be the best quarterback he's ever had in his career.
I think you can make that argument.
Yeah, so I definitely am buying into the Jarvis Landry, especially in PPR formats. Yeah, that's about it. That's all I can really say. I don't think any other wide receiver – I think the only other person on that offense that had more than one catch was David Njoku for like 3 for like 20 something maybe.
Yeah. Yep, that's about right. Njoku did see 7 targets. I mean, it's worth noting that Tyrod threw the ball 40 times. So that's a lot. But Njoku's on the field. He's big and athletic. I don't really mind him this week. Do you think he's an okay starter?
Yeah, I think he's better than like when we talked about Jesse James in the last podcast. I think he's a better play than that. I think he's a little bit better of a play than like Austin Hooper. And again, like when we talk about how you can't buy into week 1 too much, but I think you can buy into the fact that we haven't seen the full potential of this Browns offense yet just because of the slop fest that game was. So I think just the unknown and the potential is definitely gives him a bit of an edge, if that makes sense.
Cool. What do you think about Josh Gordon here? He's had the 1 catch for a touchdown, and that was it. It was a sexy fucking catch, but
yeah, I'm rolling out Josh Gordon still. If you drafted him as your wide receiver 3. You got bailed out by the touchdown, and all you can say is that against this Saints defense, this is a way better situation than you played him against the Steelers. So just fucking do it, dude.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm right there with you. And then what about the running backs? Do you trust any of them?
If I do, I'm trusting Hyde, even in PPR formats, just because I was kind of shocked by Duke Johnson's lack of usage a little bit, if that makes sense. And just because the disparity in the carries with Carlos Hyde was so great. I'd rather not play any of them. I think all 3 of them should still be owned, though.
Yeah, I agree. I don't necessarily think Chubb should be owned, but I think Hyde and Duke should definitely be owned. I don't think either one should really be started this week.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think Chubb doesn't have to be owned, but I'm fine with keeping him at the bottom of your bench unless there's someone that you really need out there.
Yeah, that's fair. That's probably about right. Um, on the New Orleans side of the ball, New Orleans put up a ton of points, but it was really only concentrated between two guys, or well, I guess the quarterback and two guys. So we'll start with Breeze. You know what? Actually, let's move back to Cleveland for 1 second. We didn't talk about Tyrod. Do you think he would start Tyrod this week?
Yes, I definitely think I would. I don't think you have to. I think I would put him like I'm not gonna, cite any rankings that I actually did, but if I had to guess where he would be, I would probably put him at quarterback like 12.
Yeah, that's probably where I would have him as well. Um, we thought this Saints defense was going to be great. They came out and they were awful week one. So, I mean, we'll see what this median actually is or what kind of defense they actually are as the season goes on. But right now, yeah, I'm right there with you. I think Tyrod's an okay start this week.
Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot about that. Let's go to New Orleans.
One more point on that is just something feels right about Tyrod playing in a dome, and I feel like I haven't seen it happen enough, and I really want to.
That's an interesting point, and you're right. For some reason, when you said that, I was like, it piqued my interest a lot.
Yeah, with no weather factor whatsoever. He played in Buffalo forever, and that game last week was really rough too with that weather. I just kind of want to see him sling it in New Orleans Dome.
Yeah, preferably to Josh Gordon, but that's just a pipe dream probably. Anyway, on the New Orleans side of the ball, Drew Brees had a great game week one. I'm right back on him if I drafted him.
Yeah. I mean, I always kind of viewed him as a top 10 guy, but to your point before, I think there's really only three guys that you're playing on this offense as good as it is, and it's Kamara, Breeze, and Thomas.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like Thomas and Kamara, obviously they're not going to have the entire offense run through them like every single week, but they're going to have a lot of the offense run through them every single week. Like these are the two guys. They're both young. They're both spectacular. It's worth noting too, Michael Thomas, they're using him more in the slot than previous years. And if we know anything about the way the NFL is evolving, it's that people in the slot get a shit ton of volume. Michael Thomas ran 40% of his routes out of the slot week one compared to 20% last year. So double the routes. There's a reason he got 17 targets this week. And then Kamara is breaking every single rule we know about fantasy football, and it's about time that we accept it pretty much.
Yeah. To your point, I mean, whose best years were in the slot for the Saints for Drew Brees? Marcus Colston.
Yep.
So that was a thing. The only other thing I'll ask you about is Ted Ginn a thing, dude?
No.
It's not. I mean, he might be better than your last bench wide receiver, especially if you had an injury. But like I'd feel comfortable having to like spot start him on the buys more than a lot of other guys at this point. But I don't think that it's something that needs to be trusted to the world out there.
That's what I was gonna say, and you already said it. He's a spot start on the buy until further notice.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to ask you too, because you're probably more intuitive to these sort of facts, but when I was doing my research for this podcast, I saw a lot of people that were like, the Browns need to use Denzel Ward to shadow Michael Thomas. And I was like, is that going to be a thing that people think matters?
I mean, I'm not really sure. Like if I'm the Browns, I'm not moving Denzel Ward around as a shadow cornerback because he's a rookie and you don't want to expose rookies to too much in the NFL. And also, even if they do, like Michael Thomas is better at wide receiver than Denzel Ward is at cornerback at this point in time.
It's funny because that was a thought of mine. And I was like, I don't know my thoughts on this. And I feel like Walsh will be more verbose in his explanation of why it's not a good thing. And that's exactly what I asked you that.
Sweet. Also, way to use the word verbose on this podcast.
Oh, yeah. It's been written on a Post-it note on my fridge for 3.5 years. So I'm glad I got to do it.
Finally paid off. Yeah. All right. Who you got in this one?
I will go with Cleveland and the under just because that's a fat spread.
I'm going to go Cleveland and the over.
Whoa, all right, I like that.
Lots of Josh Gordon. Just let me have my dream. All right. So let's move on to Arizona at the Rams. The Rams are 12.5 point favorites, 45.5 point over. Arizona, very, very disappointing this past week. They got messed up by the Redskins. Bradford didn't look good. Fitzgerald kind of got his. David Johnson got a touchdown, which was enough for you to get through. But David Johnson didn't get the pass game usage that we kind of expected. And Chase Edmonds got a lot more work than we expected as well, their backup running back. So I guess let's start with David Johnson. Do you buy that this is the new David Johnson, or are they just kind of easing him in after not using him in the preseason?
I don't know. I was kind of happy that he scored it. I have no David Johnson shares at all this year, but I was sort of just happy that he scored that touchdown just as like a, oh God, for the people that drafted him, you were correct. But you needed that. I don't know if I'm gonna say that it's so much David Johnson as just the Cardinals don't really know what the fuck they're doing. I think a little bit. And I think that they're trying to get between easing him in and figuring out what that team is. That I think that it's going to kind of be a back and forth situation with his value. You got to hope he finds the end zone, but I think that his floor is lower than a lot of the other. I would actually argue that his floor might be the lowest now, and I trust this of all the first round running backs.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, I guess that's probably fair.
With the exception of Le'Veon Bell, you bastard.
Yeah, no, it's one of those, and the thing that's most worrisome to me is that Arians would use him split out as a wide receiver a lot. Mike McCoy is not doing that so far this year, which I don't get why, if you're the new coach or the new offensive coordinator coming in, why you wouldn't look at 2016 and be like, that's exactly how we're going to use him. Because because he had 2,000 total yards, you know?
So there's two things for this team that worked, and I'm going to change one of them.
Yeah, it's like it's completely in like I don't know if it's the ego of the coaches coming in saying like I'm going to do my thing, but it's like why wouldn't you be like, "Oh, they already invented this wheel. I am just going to rip off this wheel and I'm going to put it on my own car and now we're going to drive real fast with it." Like why wouldn't that be what you do?
Yeah, and also like be willing to ride or die with that dude. Like Mike McCoy, if you get fired on like overly feeding David Johnson, then like just tip your hat and leave, you know?
Yeah, dude. It's all right. I'm not going to rant too much about it, but like it's difficult as a guy who invested heavily in David Johnson. It's difficult to watch them not use him as, you know, they really should. That being said, he still got 9 in the pass game. I don't think it's something that I'm going to worry about too much. I also think Fitzgerald, his performance was pretty encouraging. He had 10 targets, 7 catches, 76 yards. Like that's fine for me. And you know, they're going to have better games this season. And I like rolling him out every week still.
Yeah, not to like overanalyze right now, but the way I look at David Johnson, and like the only reason I'm even bringing this up is to sort of give some sort of insight for people that are a little worried. But like you're always going to play David Johnson, right? But maybe if you're that owner, that's where if your running back two is Jay Ajayi, and I'm in a league with a guy that is in this situation where you may try and ship a guy like Jay Ajayi for a more upside guy like Dion Lewis. So when David Johnson has his slips and falters and okay weeks, that you have an upside guy that can salvage that sort of situation in your team construction. That's definitely like way too deep of over analysis, but like that's how you got to think about those situations. That David Johnson may not be your Todd Gurley of this year, but he will be a running back one. And maybe you got to sort of construct your team in a way where when he falls off a little bit, that boomer bust guys can help you out and save you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree with you. Those are great points. Let's talk, I guess. There's 2 more guys I want to bring up on the Cardinals. So one is Chase Edmonds. Chase Edmonds is the backup running back. He got way more work than we expected. So Chase Edmonds this past week got 4 carries for 24 yards, 4 targets, 4 catches, 24 yards, receiving as well. I think Chase Edmonds should be owned.
Do you think Chase Edmonds should be owned solely by David Johnson owners or?
No, I think anyone. I think he could be picked up by anyone. I think David Johnson owners would be wise to pick him up. But I think even if you're not a David Johnson owner, I think Chase Edmonds like has realistic upside this year.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I've seen so many like Andre Ellington situations where I'm like, this guy could have value on his own. And it's never worked out in the past, even though the team and the coaching is totally different. That I just personally think that there's other guys like we talked about on the last podcast, Austin Eckler, people like that, that may be more worthwhile. I even think I might rather own Nick Chubb just because he could be a factor back at some point and doesn't have a stud in front of him. But I don't disagree with your thought process on it.
Okay. Nice Merrill Hodge terminology there. Factor back. No, that's definitely fair. And then the other guy I want to talk about is Ricky Seals-Jones. I was very high on him going into week one. Only got 3 catches for 19 yards. He did have 6 targets, though. That was third on the team. They also faced the Rams, who just gave up 180 fucking yards to Jared Cook. I'm still in on Ricky Seals-Jones. I'm riding him another week, dude.
Oh yeah, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't. And again, like we talked in the last podcast about guys like Kyle Rudolph and things like that. I think Ricky Seals-Jones has way more season-long upside than Kyle Rudolph does.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of quantify how like his opportunity a little bit better on the field for 92% of the Cardinals offensive snaps.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Damn.
Other than that, I don't think there's anyone to really talk about. The other wide receivers, Chad Williams and Christian Kirk, haven't really done much yet. So let's move over to the Rams, who I think are fucking easy. You play Goff, you play all 3 wide receivers, and you play Todd Gurley.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much it. Pretty much it. The only thing I'll say again back on your Ricky Seals-Jones comment is the Cardinals are going to be playing down a lot this year. So even more goes to your point of opportunity. But as far as the Rams go, yeah. I mean, I think week in and week out, I don't know what you can expect from all 3 Rams wide receivers as far as who's going to get the 20 points. But I think the opportunity in the situation is enough that they're all worth, at the very least, low wide receiver 2, mid wide receiver 3 values each week.
Yeah, it's gonna fluctuate for sure, depending on touchdowns. Like this past week, Brandon Cooks drew like 80 yards of defensive pass interference.
Right.
Robert Woods got missed on deep passes where he was behind the safety like 3 times. Like there are a lot of things that can fluctuate week to week with these Rams receivers, but all 3 of them are going to be playable unless it's like a very specific matchup. They're all going to be playable just about every week.
Yeah, oh yeah. And this is like a digressing gut feeling, but like, you know how in other situations where like good luck predicting which Buccaneers second receiver is going to get the touchdown. I feel like the week that you don't play Robert Woods will be his 25-point week, dude.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
The week that you don't play Cooper Kupp is when he catches 3 touchdowns. Like that's how that's going to go.
Yeah, and we know these guys have the ceilings to do that too. So it could be potentially frustrating if you're trying to like, because they were all drafted where they're potential starters every week, but you also probably have other guys who are potential starters based on matchup. So if you own them, you're probably gonna have some frustrating weeks with them. You'll probably have some weeks where they win you the week, but it's what you're gonna have to deal with.
Yep.
All right. Let's pick this one. I'm going Cardinals over.
Oh yeah. Who? Cardinals over?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go Rams and over as well.
Okay. I'm so invested in the Cardinals. Like I have a shitload of Fitzgerald, Johnson, and Seals-Jones. It's like I feel like I'm doing that just to kind of like placate my own like pacing mind on that topic. But anyway,
that blows my mind. But that's a side conversation that people don't need to hear.
Yeah, I really shouldn't have invested so heavily in such a bad team. I'm aware of it. It's like one of the biggest panic things like of this season for me. But anyway, let's move on. we have Detroit at San Francisco. San Francisco here is a 5.5-point favorite. The over/under is 48. Jimmy G kind of struggled week 1 against that Vikings defense. Do you think it continues week 2?
I don't know if it continues as drastically, but I think that the week 1, even though the Vikings defense is good, is enough to scare me in a sense where I'd rather play Jared Goff. I'd rather play Phillip Rivers. I mean, obviously Patrick Mahomes has way more upside and you can't really equate those two, but I think I'm moving Jimmy G to the bottom of that, third tier of quarterbacks now.
Yeah, for me, he's a play in a very good matchup quarterback. I don't think he's a guy you start in like an okay matchup or a like okay to bad matchup. He's a guy you start against like the Colts or like, the Giants or that kind of thing. He's a guy you start against a team where you say this pass off defense is bad. So yeah, I'm not really about it at all in terms of starting him there. I will say though, I'm very about starting George Kittle.
Yeah, I mean George Kittle, I think is the safest start on that entire team.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong there. I believe he led the team in targets. Um, Let me just pull this info up real quick.
No, he did. I believe Garcon had 6. I think he had 9, if I'm remembering correctly. But what I'll say about George, what's that?
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah. What I'll say about George Kittle is like when we were talking about tight ends before, what happened to me in every league was I had guys like Kyle Rudolph or Jack Doyle. Like I didn't draft a high tight end except for Gronk in one league. In every single one of those leagues, I looked and I was like, I hope George Kittle's on the waiver wire. Like somewhere I had Tyler Eifert and I was like, shit, he's not. And I really want to own that guy. So I view him as a top tight end, I think, going forward for sure. Top 10 tight end. Sorry, I didn't specify.
Yeah, no, I think that's about right. He's a guy who showed a lot of flashes last year. Looked good this past week, and we'll see how it sort of moves forward. Now, Marquise Goodwin got hurt. If you started him, that sucks. I'm sorry. He should be back this week, so that kind of throws like a wrench in things because theoretically Pierre Garcon could have been a good start. Trent Taylor could have been a good start. Dante Pettis maybe could have been a good start. Are you buying into any of these 49ers wide receivers this week?
No, I'm not. And what makes me doubt my own opinion right there is that Goodwin, like what people will see is, oh, he got hurt. He only had 1 target, whatever. I think it was 1 target, maybe 2, but I think 1.
Mm-hmm.
But that target came and that injury came, or I can't say when the target came, that injury came like late second quarter. So it wasn't like it happened on the second drive or something like that. And then like, that's why Goodwin's target share wasn't that good. It's like, they weren't really looking at him that much. So while you would want someone in that offense to be intriguing after George Kittle, I feel like Goodwin's presence will again just sort of confuse the situation. But I put Goodwin, who I was a little high on preseason, with banged up as like a high-end wide receiver 4, and then the rest of them barely ownable. Garcon, I think, is ownable, but I don't want to play any of them this week.
Yeah, it's tough because, Garcon got 6 targets, Taylor got 6 targets. Neither of them really did anything with it. And then the guy who did something was Dante Pettis, who had 5 targets, 2 catches, 61 yards, and a touchdown. And the touchdown was fucking sick. But like,
yeah,
but how do you quantify that he caught a fucking sick touchdown and the guy who would play in front of him is likely coming back this week?
Right.
Yeah, it's one of those where Pettis is interesting to me, maybe as ownable. I'm not playing any of them this week. I'm not playing any of these wide receivers. I don't think it's worth it.
I agree. But theoretically, not even just saying like the average fantasy player, but like even people like us, if Garcon caught that Pettis touchdown, Garcon would be in your lineup this week.
Yeah,
but
100%.
Of course, it was the fact that the most obscure, like hardest to sell yourself on receiver made the play, makes the whole situation even worse to kind of navigate through.
Yeah, like if I knew Dante Pettis was going to get 75% snaps this week, I would be like, yeah, throw him in your lineup, start him like completely fine. I don't think that's going to happen at all. So, so it makes it real difficult. In terms of the running backs, they both split time. They were both okay. I mean, we just saw Crowell go nuts on big plays and Powell have an okay game. I don't know. Is there any reason to play Morris or Breida?
I'll say this. I like Breida more
Yeah.
solely because Morris, I mean, they pretty much split, but Morris had those pretty rough fumbles at the goal line. Yeah, I mean, Breida, if you're stuck, man, if you're a team that had Le'Veon Bell, not to keep bringing him up, but like if you're a guy that's really strong-armed at running back, it's a really good matchup. We just saw them get run all over. I do think Detroit as a team will be better this week, but that's my own stupid opinion. But yeah, I'd rather not play either, but Breida's the guy that I am if I have to.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that's about right. Let's move to the Detroit side of the ball. They looked fucking awful this past week. Stafford was terrible. I don't think you need to play him. No one in their backfield should be started at this point. But the 3 wide receivers all had a decent amount of targets. I believe Galladay had 12, Tate had 15, and Marvin Jones had 8. I know Jones didn't really do as much with it, but do you think it's okay to start all of them?
Well, first off, I want to ask you this. Which do you think was the worst moment for the animal of a lion? Monday Night Football or when Scar killed Mufasa? Because both were equally rough, in my opinion, dude. When Scar killed Mufasa, that was like a rough moment for the lion population. But I think Monday Night Football rivals it, man. Losing to the Jets, that was rough.
Yeah, particularly after that start, just like the Darnold pick 6 and just like, oh, the Jets are going to jet. And then it's like, oh, no, the Lions are going to lion real hard right now.
Yeah. So here's what I'll say. As much as it sucks, this is so weird. You see a blowout team get blown or get blown out at home, but you're like, I want to start all 3 wide receivers. So I guess I'll kind of narrow it down more and say I think I'm most confident in Kenny Golladay.
Okay, see, I think I'm most confident in Golden Tate, but
Okay.
I understand that. And my reasoning goes back to like what me and Vinny said last week was that I think Tate's role is unquestioned in the slot. I think that's like he has this role that we know he's going to do every week. Whereas I think the guys on the outside catching intermediate to deep throws and catching touchdowns, I think that might bounce back and forth between Galladay and Jones.
Yeah, that's fair. I'll counter that with something that's a lot less something that it's something you can't trust as much. But I'll say that like last year when Galladay got the shots that he did and the field time, the snap count that he did, I was like, that's very interesting that a rookie that's completely unproven and like an end zone threat is getting this sort of workload in a receiving core that has Tate, Ebron, Riddick, like Marvin Jones, all these guys. And the fact that they went right back to it kind of tells me something. And I just pick him over Tate strictly for I think he has a way better chance. I think you'll agree of finding the end zone.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
So my thought process is like they really want to get him in this offense, even though the coaching staff is a turnover. I know that. But as an organization as a whole, it was like Galladay was more relevant last year than I thought he deserved to be. And the fact that he was even more so in the opening week and looked pretty good is telling to me that he's got a little bit more potential.
That's a good point. And I guess the point to make there is that Tate needs 7+ targets and 7 at the very least to get it done. Galladay can get it done with 4 targets. If they don't throw that much on a certain week or maybe he's covered, he's still an end zone threat. He's still a guy who they might just throw, jump balls up to in the end zone. So I'll
stand by that. I'll stand by that and say that in every single league that I own Kenny Galladay, which is 4, I am starting him in every single one of those leagues.
Wow. That's impressive. You own him in that many. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And one of those leagues, I actually just recently put up 210 points in like a sick showing, and I'm still putting Kenny Galladay in that lineup. Like it's a good team.
Fuck yeah, dude.
I'm down on Kenny Galladay big time. Well, I should say up, but
Yeah, down with. Up on, down with.
I'm just cool.
Exactly. Anyway, so I think that'll do it for the Lions. Trust Rodgers on Galladay over me. He's very confident. Who do you want in this one?
Yeah, and I'm also very glad you didn't even bring up that backfield. But one thing I want to say about the Lions real quick, I'm sorry, is trust Stafford this week. I still trust Stafford this week. If you own him, you drafted him, I'm rolling him out there still. Niners defense is not good. That secondary is weak. And the Lions just got straight up surprised and outcoached. And I'm rolling Stafford out in the league that I have him in again this week. Sorry, I just want to say that.
You got the hot Lions takes, and I like them, dude. I like them a lot.
Yeah, dude, I'm a Packers fan. Weird, but whatever. So in this game, I am taking the Lions and the over.
I'm going to do the same thing. Lions in the over. All right. And with that, we are going to take a quick break. We'll hear from Auction Draft, and we will be right back. All right, guys, that was Auction Draft. Make sure you are checking them out. Rodgers, let's dive back into these last 4 games. Let's close out week 2 so I can go watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia because they just came out with a new episode. Anyway, New England at Jacksonville. New England is a 2-point road favorite. The over/under here is 45. I don't know what the fuck to think about this matchup. Let's start with New England, I guess. I mean, I guess you're playing Tom Brady, right?
Yeah, you have to.
All right. So now that we've established that, which of his pass catchers are you playing?
All right. Well, this is hard, man. I mean, you got to play Gronk. This is the thing, and you know it if you draft Brady or you draft Gronk, you're riding it all the way. You will never sit them. You can't, and you knew that when you drafted him. So don't even question it. And I don't really think me and Walsh need to give you much analysis on it.
The question that comes in then is, are you playing Chris Hogan after his one catch performance? Can you please tell me? Because I don't know whether to play him or not. Is he going to be up against Jalen Ramsey? You got to tell me, dude. I'm panicking.
I think Bill Belichick will be smart enough to get him away from Jalen Ramsey a little bit, but I don't think it'll. Man, I don't know. It's the hardest decision I've ever to make because you know what I did in my one league where I own Chris Hogan and he's my wide receiver too. I sat him this week for Kenny Golladay.
Oh my God, you fucking genius.
That's what I did. So that is literally the only insight I can give. I wouldn't be shocked if the Patriots work a way to find Chris Hogan a little more shit, but I also wouldn't be surprised if his shit got locked down again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. It's tough because like Hogan just came off that performance. Dorsett just had 7 targets, 7 catches, 61 yards. Me and Vinny told everyone that picking up Dorsett would be a bad move. Like, I'm kind of flustered on the Patriots. I don't really know what to think. I think I'm going to play Hogan where I have him. And you know, obviously the rest of the pass catchers are what they are. So I get the running backs. Burkhead and White
I
were both
wanted to make a comment on Dorsett. Can I make a comment on Dorsett real quick?
No, yes. Yeah, you can.
Is that I agree with you and Vinny's take overall, especially because you know you didn't draft Dorsett and Edelman will be coming back, but he didn't run routes on almost like every single passing down in week 1, which kind of is a shocker to me. And like with the sketchy matchup, I really wouldn't be shocked if he would end up being a better play than Hogan. But like if you're the Jaguars, you got to play around, you got to plan around Gronk, right, man? Like that's got to be your total focus.
Yeah. Do you know who lined up in the slot? I don't know.
I don't, but I would guess Dorsett. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. I was gonna say I don't know, and our sound quality is bad enough that I don't want to like go searching for it right now. But
Yes.
but my thinking would be that whoever's lining up in the slot probably has a decent matchup against DJ Hayden, because Boye and Ramsey don't really travel into the slot. So whoever's lining up in the slot, and we can like tweet this out or like do something to let you guys know, like that's probably the matchup you want to attack for the Patriots wide receivers.
Yeah, I think the matchup that I want to attack is going to be the guy we're probably going to talk about next. But
James White?
Oh yeah, hell yeah, dude. I'm expecting James White to be by far and away the highest scoring Patriot in fantasy this week.
Wow. I mean, he did lead the team in targets this past week with 9. So tell me why you're so confident that he's going to be that good this week.
I mean, honestly, I wish I had like something way more analytical to say like, oh, because of like all this shit, but it's strictly just because of the Jaguars secondary, and that is honestly at this point, with the exception of possibly Gronk, I can't really remember the career years or whatever, but the most veteran pass catcher that Tom Brady has as far as experience with him. So with a great secondary and leading the team in targets, I don't see why you would not just dump it off to James White a lot. And if I remember correctly, James White had a really filthy AFC championship against the Jaguars as well that got them to the Super Bowl. So I think that matchup works against the Jaguars a little bit. And I just don't see any reason why you would go against, you know, what has worked for you in the past against really good defenses. I just feel like the receptions will be there. I think he gets like 8 catches. I think he's got at least 8 carries, and I think it translates to some decent yardage as the Jaguars D tries to completely swallow up Gronk and Hogan.
Fair enough. With that being said, what do you think about Burkhead?
Burkhead. I don't think Burkhead showed enough in week 1 to play him against arguably the worst matchup on the road, if that makes sense, that he will face all year. I think James White's a much better play in standard and PPR. I don't think Burkhead is awful, but when we talked in the past about guys like Lamar Miller, I'd rather play Lamar Miller. I'd rather play Jay Ajayi. And I hate Jay Ajayi, and that's just kind of where I sit right there. And I'd put him above guys on the Niners and things like that. But that's just kind of to give you context of where I kind of rank him.
Okay, that's definitely fair. I think you're about right there. Let's move to the Jacksonville side of the ball. I don't know what the fuck to make of this. Fournette has his hamstring injury. Now we're saying maybe he'll play, maybe he won't. I mean, if he doesn't, I think TJ Yeldon's a great play, but what if he does, you know? And then what if he does, but he's limited and like all these sorts of things? I don't know. What's your opinion here on this backfield? Because I don't know what to think about it.
As a Fournette owner too, and someone that weirdly has owned a lot of Jaguars in fantasy in the past, it's that shitty situation of Fournette. If he goes, you got to play him. I would not be surprised if Fournette is active and TJ Yeldon gets more work. Just again, because I think if you're the Jaguars, and I always delve too deep into this, but you're like, okay, Fournette is banged up. This is a game that we should probably lose. But again, we're a fringe playoff team. So do we want to hurt Fournette again and go all out trying to beat the Patriots in week 2? Or should we kind of just see how this game goes, keep our players healthy? And TJ Yeldon has been incredibly effective, not just in week 1, but in the past when he's filled in for any Jaguars running back that he's backed up for or was the starter at some points. And you just got to roll Fournette out there. If Fournette is active, I'm hesitant on starting Yeldon, though, even though I think that it's possible he has a better game. Does that make sense? It's kind of contradictory, but do you know where I'm coming from with that? As far as safety?
No, that definitely makes sense. And I think the ideal scenario, if you're like a Jaguars running back owner, is that Fournette just sits straight out and you're able to start Yeldon. But, you know, we'll see what happens there. In terms of the rest of the team, the targets were really split evenly among the wide receivers. I don't know that there's a single one that I'm comfortable starting.
Who is?
I'm sorry?
Which one you're saying you're comfortable to start?
Oh, no, I said I don't think there's a single one.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. Sorry, I missed you for a second. But now I don't want to touch any Jaguar except for that backfield.
All right, cool. In that case, what are you picking here?
I'm going to take New England in the under.
Yeah, I think I'm doing the same. Let's move on to Oakland at Denver. Denver's a 5.5-point favorite. The over-under is 45.5. Let's start with, I guess we'll start with Oakland. Jared Cook, that's it.
I mean, I still like Amari Cooper. I'm going to roll Amari Cooper out there. I don't feel good about it. I think he's this week a wide receiver 3, but again, I just like the volume potential of him. I think Denver gets up in this game, which I was going to talk about a little bit later. No offense, Walsh. I'm sorry. But I think Denver kind of gets up and they try and figure some shit out as far as what their offense is going to be going forward.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I mean, so first I'll say it's hard for me to have objective opinions about this game because I am so upset about Oakland and the way that they are playing and what they have done to their franchise and all these sorts of things. But Jared Cook makes sense just because the Denver cornerbacks and that sort of thing have been so good. I think Denver is a little bit vulnerable against the tight end. We saw that with Will Disley and Nick Vannett, which if you don't know those names, that's because you didn't pay that much attention week 1. Because if you didn't do that, you wouldn't know those names, which is why it makes Jared Cook kind of a play this week. In terms of Cooper, I could see.
And listen to Walsh.
Mm-hmm.
Just listen to Walsh. No, I was saying listen to Walsh, and then you will know those names.
Oh, yeah, I guess so. In terms of Cooper, I could see it. I don't trust it. So it is what it is. I guess talk about the Denver side of the ball. You said they were going to get up, right?
Yeah. I mean, on the Denver side of the ball, the receiving game is kind of exactly what it is year in, year out. Like Thomas, Sanders, both getting good targets, both getting good snaps. It's you can play both of those dudes every single week. I think what you really focus on, unless you have any more pass catchers you want to talk about, is the backfield.
I kind of want to talk about Cortland Sutton.
Yeah, do it, dude.
He
I don't.
He's on the field for basically every single snap. He's super talented. He didn't do that much week one, but the Raiders secondary sucks ass. If I were to rank the starts of the three Denver wide receivers, I would say Sanders, Thomas, Sutton, but it's very close between Thomas and Sutton, I think. I think Cortland Sutton might finish this year with more fantasy points than Demaryius Thomas. I think Emmanuel Sanders will lead the team in fantasy points for sure. But yeah, like I think Sanders I think is one of the best starts of the week. And then I think you can start Thomas and Sutton.
Wow. Okay. I mean, I'll take your opinion on that. I just always look at like this is a small sample size, but I'm just like, when have either the Broncos or Case Keenum had a third wide receiver that was relevant ever in a while? That's just the way I look at it. And I like think of like Jarius Wright in the past, where it was like that dude was like maybe almost relevant on the Vikings, like and shit like that. But I'm just like, I just think Case Keenum is fine sitting with those dudes. Cortland Sutton's a way better talent than the other dudes I'm referencing. But I just don't think there's enough to go around.
That's definitely fair and probably the correct take. But let's move to the backfield here. Royce Freeman, we all thought was going to be the dude. Came out, got some carries, didn't get any targets. Philip Lindsay got some targets. He got a touchdown. What do you think about this backfield, man?
Yeah, first off, what the hell, man? I mean, I'll say this, that no one should have expected Royce Freeman to get any targets or being on any like sort of passing work, because that's kind of been the one main knock on him all preseason. But Philip Lindsay, dude, you Colorado native, weed smoking crazy dude, like where you that's assumptive. I shouldn't have said that. I don't know if he does. There's so much Colorado, you guys that's just a joke. But whatever. I mean, I trust Freeman way more. And again, no offense, Walsh, but I just think the Broncos kind of get up a little bit more in this game early. And Freeman's obviously the ground and pound guy. So I think this, I just, the way I feel like it's gone in the past is that, you know, the Broncos are going to say, like, okay, we've wanted to give this dude the full shot to close out a game. Let's see what Royce Freeman really has, like, after that filthy preseason. Let's give him the ball. Let's see if it works. And I just think this is the game where he kind of takes a better share of the workload. I'm not saying that sustains all the way, especially if he doesn't do much with it. But I think this is the game where they kind of have a better handle on it, where they can, you know, run out the clock maybe a little more or manage the game a little better. And this is the shot that they give him to be the bell cow.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I don't take any offense because I think the Broncos are going to go up. I think the Raiders get gashed by good running backs, and I think Royce Freeman's a good running back when he gets the ball in his hands. So, yeah, I'm on Royce Freeman this week. I think Philip Lindsay is worth owning. I don't think he's worth starting, but he's probably on your waiver wire. So if you have some running back that you don't give a fuck about, just go pick up Philip Lindsay instead. But yeah, that's kind of where I am with that. Like I said, I don't take any fucking offense to the idea that the Raiders are bad. This is the year of sports that has broken my spirit with my team. So I'm going to take the Broncos and the over here because I think the Broncos are going to fucking kill them. But go ahead.
Oh man, I'm gonna take the Broncos and the under. But also, very weirdly, I wanted to say something about last week. It was the first time I've ever seen in a box score where Seattle versus Denver had running back carries split 15 for 71, 15 for 71, and then 2 carries. And then the Seahawks also had a 7-7 and 2 split. It was like very identical and symmetrical all the way around. And it made my math-loving self really horny.
Nice. I like that. Well, fair enough. Let's move to the Sunday night game. We got
Yeah, but I like the Broncos.
Oh, sorry. You still there?
Go on.
Sorry, we might have some sound issues, guys.
No, yeah, Giants at Dallas.
Yeah, I apologize for that. It's I think I was kind of behind and whatever else. But anyway, let's move on to the Sunday night game. Giants at Cowboys. There are not many fantasy plays for this. Dallas is a 3-point favorite. The over-under is 42. On the Dallas side, dude, it's just Zeke.
I completely agree. And Zeke, I don't really love that much, man. I hope if I own him, which I don't have any shares, I'm hoping he has a good week, and I think he's another trade bait guy. I don't think he's going to live anywhere up to his ADP. And I think even Zeke owners know that, man. I think if you're a Zeke owner, you crazy bastard, you know what's happening.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you, man. It's tough to expect much out of it. I mean, like Zeke's going to do what he's going to do, but that offensive line isn't what it was. In terms of the wide receivers, I know Don and Vinny talked about Cole Beasley being a guy to pick up. He had 8 targets. He had 7 catches. He wasn't on the field for more than 65% of snaps. The Cowboys are running this weird, like 5 wide receiver rotation. You don't need to own any single Cowboys wide receiver. If you're going to own one, it's probably Beasley, but like you don't need to at all, because when are you going to want to fucking start a guy who's a little slot receiver getting 65% of the snaps?
Yeah.
It's just not something you need to do. And for the foreseeable future, Zeke is the only play for them, and he's not even a great play.
Yeah, the only thing that I will say positive on Zeke, and this was like a crazy few articles that I read today while at work, not working, sorry work, was that so the Cowboys saw a lot less like stacked boxes this week, obviously, because or a lot more stacked boxes, I mean, because the pass game is just really not that good. And apparently, like Jason Garrett has been watching a lot of like Sean McVay film to like try and translate Ezekiel Elliott into a Todd Gurley type like career progression where he's trying to like run out of the shotgun a lot more and do a lot more like fast paced shit. And like apparently that was something that took Todd Gurley in the Rams. Like when you have like a more mediocre quarterback and passing game and a less elite O line, if you will, but like a lot of shotgun and like freaking rollout passes are like something that Jason Garrett's been like looking into trying to do. That's like a slow progression of success. I don't really have as much information as I should as I bring up this topic, but like it's something to keep an eye on that like maybe you can ride it out with Zeke, but I have no good feelings about this Cowboys offense going forward at all.
Yeah, no, me neither. I don't think they're going to be a good offense at all. I don't think they're going to be a good team. Let's move to the Giants side. So I think this is pretty easy too. You're playing Saquon and you're playing Odell, and like I think that's also it. I don't think you need to play Evan Ingram. I don't think you need to own Evan Ingram.
Yeah, no, I there's so much more in that tight end roulette pool that is just as fucking fine. And the only thing I'll say about the Giants is that like Saquon Barkley got almost 20% of the target share, and that like should not sustain probably going forward. But other than that, and that's another reason why I kind of think James White in the like what we were talking about before against the Patriots. Like if Eli's checking down to Saquon Barkley a lot, I just feel like that just is a good another indicative factor of that matchup for James White. But whatever, I'm just so on James White. I'm getting off topic. But yeah, just like don't count on that a lot. But yeah, Barkley, and you're not playing Eli.
For a second, I was like, wait, what the fuck's he talking about? And then I got it. Yeah, no, not playing Eli. I would say, like, who are you picking in this one? I honestly have no idea. I'm going to take the under for sure.
Yeah, I want to pick the Lions, but they're not playing in this game.
That's true.
I'm gonna go with the Cowboys and the under just because they're the home team.
Well, just to be different, I'm going to do Giants and under, but like I don't fucking know or care who wins that. All right, let's move to the Monday night game, last game of the week, and then we'll let you guys go. We got Seattle at Chicago. Chicago's a 3-point favorite. Would you have guessed that, like, going into the season? Yeah, dude, the over-under is 43 points, so we don't expect much scoring here. But let's start on the Seattle side. Russell Wilson did some things. The running backs kind of split some shit. Will Dissly had 103 yards for some reason, even though he was outsnapped by Nick Vannett, their other tight end. And then Tyler Lockett and Brandon Marshall both scored touchdowns.
I just want to stop you. I can't believe you that on this podcast or in football, anybody had to say Will Dissly got over 100 yards, but he was outsnapped by Nick Vannett.
Yeah, it's like, what a stupid statement.
Factual, but
Yeah. So what do we think here? Like against this Bears defense, which is pretty good. Like, are we trying to like go all out on the Seahawks or not really at all?
Definitely fucking not, dude. I think the intense opposite. So let's just, I'm sure Vinny and Don talk about it. Baldwin's out for at least a couple weeks.
Yep.
I put Tyler Lockett as a wide receiver 3 and Will Dissly as your freaking 0-0 tight end roulette wheel, dude. It could work. I don't want to trust it, but I don't want to play any single Seahawk otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, no one on the Seahawks had more than 6 targets in week 1. Had in 5 targets between Carson and Penny. And then like, yeah, man, it's just like an ugly team. Like you can play Russell Wilson and because he's the entire offense. But like other than that, like good fucking luck.
Yeah, one thing I will say is that I think that this may be the first game where Rashad Penny starts to take the reins a little bit. I'd read in a couple articles that Pete Carroll kind of wanted to, ease him into the offense, obviously, with that injury, that finger injury. And him and Chris Carson split the carries. They kind of had Penny did nothing with them, but they kind of had similar days apart from Chris Carson's one, like, 25-yard carry or whatever it was. And the fact that they split – on Penny's first game when he's supposed to be the guy going forward, I think this may be the game where you see a little more disparity between their carry share. But that's just it. I don't think you start him based on that. But I think this is the first domino to fall in Penny taking over that backfield.
Okay, that's fair. I don't really have a strong opinion either way on that. But yeah, I mean, if I'm going to play anyone on the Seahawks this week, it's Tyler Lockett because I think he has the most big play ability. It's about all I got. Mm-hmm. On the Bears side of the ball, Jordan Howard looked great. Tariq Cohen was also pretty involved. What do you think about this backfield?
Yeah, I think that this offense as a whole is going to bounce back a little bit. Cohen kind of got like a little bit of an underwhelming workload based on, if you just looked at the box score. But the game script was really, really against him. And I think that it's possible that this is his like worst game of the year usage-wise. In the sense that, and I'm a snobby Packer fan saying this, but I think the Bears were like, oh, shit, what do we do? Like, we need to run with Jordan Howard and not involve Tariq Cohen as much. And I just don't think the Bears are going to be in a game script like that very often this entire year. Not saying they'll be so bad, but I think that, things will play out that Cohen needs to get a lot more usage. I think he only got like 9 touches, something like that. Is that correct?
Yep, 8 touches.
8 touches, yeah, something that's there. But I think that may be his lowest total of the year. I think I'm comfortable rolling both these guys out this week.
Okay. Yeah, I'm definitely comfortable with Howard. Cohen, I'm a little bit less comfortable, but I don't think it's the worst start you could make. Outside of that, I mean, I guess you could play Allen Robinson. And the guy that I'm definitely still in on is Trey Burton. I know he was very underwhelming, 1 catch for 15 yards. He still had 6 targets. He was still on the field constantly. I think Trey Burton, if you drafted him, you roll him out again, you keep it going.
Oh, yeah, I agree. But since it's the last game of the week, too, Walsh, and I can't get through 2 full my first podcast without saying it. I think the Bears defense is a great own for the rest of the year going forward. And that you can roll that out this week as well with a home game against the Seahawks. Pick up that Bears team.
Wow. Never thought I was going to hear that.
It's true.
I guess I don't think you're wrong. But I guess we'll leave it at that for the week, right? I feel like that's the only way to end this.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right. Yeah, I think that'll probably do it. We got through all the games. I apologize. I hope the sound quality is okay. I don't know how this is going to turn out. My internet's been fucking sketchy the entire night. So hopefully
I think for the most part, it's okay, Walsh.
What's up?
I think for the most part, it's okay.
All right.
There was some slow, but you came back hot. And, the people know that it's all about quantity, not quality at Let's Talk Fantasy Football.
Yeah, we're about the goddamn content. We're going to give you as much as possible, and it's going to all suck. No, we hope you guys enjoyed this, the week 2 preview. We hope you enjoyed Rodgers coming back. Rodgers, do you have anything to leave the people with before week 2?
No, man. It completely sucks being back. That's pretty much about it. And go Kenny Galladay and the Lions, even though I'm a Packers fan. But
there you go.
yeah.
Rodgers likes the Bears defense and Kenny Galladay. Take it to the bank. All right, guys. Well, it's been a lot of fun tonight. I have had probably a few too many Labatt Blues. We'll talk to you guys next week. And for Rodgers, I am Walsh. Later, podcast.